Everyone. We will commence the meeting in about 30 seconds. So if we could all take our places. Everyone. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Administration and Finance, Recreation and Parks Committee for March 15th, 2022. Acknowledge the presence of course, the Mayor and Council, Mayor Kurt Wilson, Council Member Christine Hall, Council Member Michael Palermo, Council Member Peter Vanstrom, Council Member Lee Hills, Council Member William Morthland. The purpose of committee meetings are for the city departments to convey information to the mayor and city council and discuss initiatives listed on the published agenda. By ordinance, the committee consists of the mayor, members of city council, and city administrator. The ordinance calls for the city administrator to chair the committee meetings. This is a public meeting, but not a public hearing. Therefore, while the meeting is open to the public, we do not take public comments or questions during committee meetings. Public comments or questions are received at the regular city council meetings held at 7:00 p.m. in the city council chambers on the second and fourth Monday of each month, and then on the fifth Monday of each month in open forum. We do encourage citizens to engage our online platforms, and if you have any questions or need information regarding any matter, our staff is available to provide that information to you. I would encourage the viewing audience to visit the city website for meetings, events, and departmental information. Also, if you have service requests or need to report a concern, I would also recommend utilizing the City of Roswell app or service web portal. I would also encourage viewing the items listed on the Mayor and Council's 100-day plan. There you will find a video of Mayor Kurt Wilson detailing each project and initiatives, which comprises the 100-day plan. The first item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes for the Administration and Finance and Recreation and Parks Committee meeting for February 15th, 2022. Do I have a motion to approve those minutes from February 15, 2022? Motion by Council Member Hills. We have a second. Second by Council Member Morthland. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Thank you so much. Passes unanimously. The second item we have is under administration. We have the IT one-year review for 2021 to 2022. Mr. Christopher Zach.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Give me 1 second to get my presentation up. How are you guys doing tonight?
So he's got to get his IT working. The IT guy's got to get the IT. gonna wow us again after all the money he saved last time.
Yeah, you
at
got
the
a
last
lot,
meeting.
he's right. You got a lot to do, Chris.
I think the news is good, and we just have to hope the person presenting it could do it effectively, and that I'm less sure of.
You look sharp.
Thank you. Well, thank you guys for being here and being forced to listen to what I have to say. I think we're going to do this as a yearly presentation. Something that we kind of quoted in the packet is that when you do things right, it's like we've done nothing at all. And that's kind of where I want IT to try to be, is that we're trying to keep things normal for you guys, and that you don't necessarily need to know what that takes, except once a year we're going to force you to know what that takes. And that the time is now. So we have our mission statement, which I do actually believe in. I know a lot of people will put a mission statement, and I'm not going to read it, but I'm going to kind of summarize what our objective is and where we see ourselves. We are a support role. We exist to make everyone else's job easier or better. We are not trying to be the superstars of the city. We want to be the sixth man off the bench helping the rest of the city. So that's kind of what we're trying to capture in our mission statement. In our presentation today, I'm going to kind of go through two parts. One is our current state and how we got here, and then what our focuses have been and what they will be, and then a kind of more specific what we've accomplished over the last year. So I'm going to kick it off and going with how we got here. Our division is about 20 years old. I have one person on staff who actually was here from the very beginning, so that's kind of cool. As you guys know, technology has rapidly progressed over the last 20 years, so things are consistently changing. And trying to get your holding is very challenging for a division like mine. I'm going to start the timeline from 2016 to give kind of a brief background of successes of my predecessors that kind of allowed me to operate in the way I would like to, and I think the way that I think is best for the city. In 2016, 2018, I think this department had a very low-cost focus and was extremely operational. Both my predecessor and my predecessor's predecessor were extremely good operational. They did a very good job of fixing things. They also did a very good job of establishing the help desk to kind of be extremely well reviewed and received by the staff. That wasn't always the case, so that's something they did a really good job at accomplishing. In 2018, there were server issues that brought down our infrastructure, and so my predecessor very correctly switched to kind of a best-in-class approach to get our servers up to date to the speed they need to be, so we didn't have concerns of constant failure or a looming threat of everyone being brought down for multiple days. I came in February 8th, 2021, and through the actions of my predecessors, I got to take advantage of the fact that I didn't need to be operational. So my kind of vision is moving from an operational division, I'll make that mistake a couple times, to a strategic one. And also just my background in general is fit for purpose. So I have to thank my predecessors for giving me the ability to kind of refocus and establish where we should be. I think we are now looking at, what should we pay and what's the best thing for the city, and trying to find the best value and somewhere in between the middle. To talk about our focuses for the last year, it's been very internally focused. I think it'll be that way for the next year, maybe next 2 years. I'll try to go into more detail why. We had a lot of focus on strategic planning, on contract management. I've got a very heavy vendor management background, which I think goes very well with IT, and I think hopefully the more we go in this presentation, you'll understand why. Documentation, super important. Process creation, process improvement, and process automation. Process automation is kind of a new one. I have one example of that, but we hope to expand that. We're doing some pretty cool stuff. This year, we're looking at continuing a lot of that same stuff, and then a major focus this year is on the asset management. That's a gap I know that we need to be better about, and we're working towards making sure we have every asset recorded, we know what's going in and out, we have all these processes documented. And then after that, we're going to start looking at transitioning from us only looking internally and fixing our issues with looking externally and trying to be more of a strategic partner for the other departments and divisions. So to kind of offer that consulting handout to say, hey, we think we can make improvements here. This is how we can help you. In addition to that, cloud migration, that's going to be a big thing coming up. That aligns with public safety looking to implement a new solution. I am pushing heavily that it should be cloud-based for a multitude of reasons. Just to give a quick summary, we have huge investments in our current infrastructure, and until we have CAD and Outlook until they're in the cloud, we have to continue that heavy infrastructure. actionable data, and then cross-department collaboration. So we're looking for that strategic shift to start happening in 2023. This is my staff. I'm not going to go into everything we do. I'm hoping, I'll send this to you guys later if you want to go into details. If I have more time, I would just read everything we're responsible for to try to scare you and recognize all the things we're doing. Some quick highlights is we manage a fiber ring. Some of you guys may or may not know that. That's how our internet connects. We have 28 locations that we provide services for. 20 are on the fiber ring, 8 are remote. We manage all the security. We manage the servers. We manage virtual machines. We manage the data backups. And then there's a lot of other kinds of specific things we do, but one thing I kind of want to give a lot of credit to my team on is we have 3 help desk technicians that operate 24/7, which is hugely impressive. So you could call us any time of the night. It's going to wake them up. They're going to pick up the call, and they're going to help you. And that happens all the time. So this weekend we had issues with our public safety. We had a help desk technician drive in that day to solve it. And I really want to call out 3 people are accomplishing 24/7 coverage. I think it is hugely impressive. And then the bottom right, this is how we compare to our neighboring cities. To compare apples to apples, I added GIS into our department. That's typical. Other departments are listing IT and GIS as one department. So just as we compare, we have a much higher staff to employee ratio, and I really do think it's because I have an extremely stellar team that we're able to accomplish that high ratio compared to other cities. All right, this is more of the year review and what we've accomplished. These are our department's guiding principles, which, again, I truly believe in. This is the order of significance. I think a lot of IT people beat the drum of security and would put it first. But I thought about long and hard, and security ultimately protects stability. So I thought, stability's got to be number 1, closely followed by security. So we're going to go into details on how we kind of met these guiding principles in the last year. All right, so in the left is a dashboard I produce for Mr. Fisher every week that gives the health of the department. You're going to see images from that dashboard a lot. I think it represents data in an extremely effective way. So I'll probably pull it up once or twice. So want to talk about the help desk. That's the people who, when you have an issue, you reach out to, they solve it. If you reach out to us, we'll create a ticket. Tickets will range from anything of a server is completely down and people aren't able to work, to I need to reset my password, and also strategic things where someone will say, hey, I have a need, how could IT help us? And then that usually gets created into a project. And a couple things I want to highlight with successes there. So we've made a bunch of process improvements, and on the left is data that I think represents the results. So the top is number of tickets created over the last year, and you'll see a slight downward trend. I don't think that data speaks for itself because you could have process improvement that would both increase and decrease ticket account. Then you have concurrent tickets open, which is any tickets we have open in any given week. You'll notice we have a significant downward trend, which should indicate that we've seen the ability to close tickets much quicker while retaining a similar amount of tickets created. And the way we were able to achieve that is we implemented new problem management process and plan, which whenever something comes down, we now have specific guidelines on what gets communicated and when, who gets communicated to, and you'll see that communication until end of resolution. I'm sure sometimes you guys are like, well, this doesn't relate to me, why are you telling me about some application? But we think communication is, it's better to over-communicate than under-communicate. Also with this process, we record downtimes for everything, the reason why, and the solution, so we retain that information and are able to look at strategically to see where we're having issues that might need a bigger solution. In addition, we have new policy for SOP guidelines that's stating what a ticket is, what the expected response is, and additionally a new policy for users to follow up with people requesting things. So I think that's led to a lot of the overall decrease in number of tickets open at any given time. Next, we have network uptime. Last year, we had a 99.88% uptime. Really, we're targeting the 99.9. It's kind of an IT game to see how many 9s you could get after the first 9. So we're trying to get more. The nice thing about networking is we get really good reporting. And this is, I'm going to show off my dashboard. It's really sweet. Let's see. Oh, I won't be able to. OK, that's all right. Go back. So we have really good reporting on the dashboard. We're able to connect to all our servers to tell us when they go down. And we've implemented a couple processes. One, we get this very nice dashboard that tells us what's going on. And we now look at anytime a site goes down, or it has less than a 97% uptime for a week, we have to provide an explanation, and then we have done a yearly review where we've seen locations that are in specific need and that we're now actioning. For example, Mimosa Hall is one that we've seen have issues with connectivity, and we've implemented a backup router to increase its uptime, and we're doing that with several other sites. Next is our application uptime, very similar to the network uptime. This is where the problem planning comes from, where we're documenting anytime there's an issue with an application. We're recording why in the solution, and then we're following it strategically at the end of the year to see where there's issues that needs to get addressed. Much like networking, just harder to record that we don't get a nice piece of hardware telling us how up something is. And then lastly, and this is kind of going into our new focus for this year, is our hardware replacement plan and our asset management. So something we've really tried to tackle is getting a record of every piece of hardware we have, when it went into production, when its end of life will be, and how long it's supported for. This kind of came from feedback when I first got here from finance that there's a lot of capital projects that they kind of weren't aware were coming up. And so we're hoping with this kind of recording that we could give finance and you guys way more of a heads up when we're requesting something and why, that you could get multiple years of planning for servers that are going to need to be replaced instead of it just being, hey, budget requests. We're going to need this year. Additionally, we have a new tool that's specific for asset management, which does depreciation, but I won't go into much more than that. All right, security. All right, the first time I'm trying to scare you. The city of Roswell network fends off an average of 576 attacks weekly. Okay, I didn't get the reaction I was hoping for. So that's an accurate number. I'll say systems are really good at stopping systems. They're not really good at stopping people. So our system is really good at stopping automated attacks. We still get a bunch of phishing attempts. We ask that you reach out to us. Some other things we implemented this year is a 32-page comprehensive critical response plan. So if we were to get attacked, that we have a documentation in place, cross-departmental, on what to do, how to react, what we need to record. Another process we implemented is an FBI mitigation plan. We joined multiple security groups. Weekly, we'll get a list of malicious IPs that have been identified for attacking. We'll add them to our firewall, so we're being proactive about that. Secondly, about once a quarter, they'll release a mitigation plan that says, hey, this attack happened, this is what you need to do to prevent it. Anytime we get one of those, we now are required to either checklist that we're doing it or come up with a plan to do any of the recommendations. We implemented a new monthly newsletter for security, quarterly training, and then automated updates on the computers, which I'll probably touch a little bit more in a little bit. I do want to touch on, there's 3 major attacks that we saw this year and kind of our quick response to them. So on the left is the number that represents the 567. On the right, we saw 3 big attacks this year. Halfium, which required us to do an immediate patching on our Outlook server. Halfium allowed people to get into Outlook servers, update their privileges, and be able to do whatever they wanted. Print Nightmare, very similar. The attack was on the Windows printer spool. Same thing, except this required us to update everyone's computer within a couple, I think it ended up being a month or 2. But before this happened, we did not have a good system in place for keeping computers up to date, and now everyone's computer is automatically updated, which I'm sure it's not everyone's favorite to get told that they have to reboot their computer, but this is what it protects against. Without that automation, we could have an exploit, and it would take us multiple months to get you up to the correct version. So allowing us to keep you automatically updated allows us to be able to prevent those exploits. And the last was Log4j, which didn't affect us too much. We had a couple servers we had to update, but really this was on the vendor side that we just had to make sure they did it. Right. Security. Oop. Lastly, we've implemented a kind of new reporting for our data backups. In itself, I don't think this is too impressive from a security, but there's kind of a multitude of things here that I want to talk to. So first is a cost savings component, where we're paying a partner vendor to do this service for us. It's something about $1,800 a month. When we looked into what was being actually done, we kind of recognized really they're just emailing us when there's a problem. And it's like, for $1,800 a month, we could answer our own emails. So what came from this is we get notifications on our server backups, and we get about 15 a day that would have different data. So what we did is built a script that will read all the emails in that mailbox, consolidate into a database, and then reproduce this one report daily that tells us, it gives us a check on false positives to make sure it's working, which is the number of success, and then tells us exactly what we need to action. So a couple things here is now we have better actionable reporting on our backups and making sure they're running correctly. We reduced the cost, and we have a sweet script that we automated a process completely. And that's kind of what I'm speaking to in the next couple of years of strategic visions of, for the time being, we're going to keep this internal because we got a lot of testing to do, but I hope in a couple of years we could offer that services to other departments. I think there's a lot we could automate. All right, last is cost. Well, sorry, not last. Convenience is last. Cost, probably the thing you're most interested in. All right, so you guys are aware of the telecom, which kind of spurred this presentation. But there's another capital savings that I want to bring up, which was the IT strategic plan. This is a project I adopted. I think the budget amount came from just requesting quotes from a vendor. When we went into this, me and Michael reached out to different cities and directly asked them what they paid and kind of came up with a list of what the expected cost was. We then took that number based off of what their average spend was and what their population and staff was, and came up with a model of what we thought ours should cost. So when we went to market, we had a very educated guess on what we should be paying for this, and put out a budget that was significantly lower than what was previously presented. And we're successful with finding a vendor who could implement it, and we actually had multiple vendors compete that I thought all could do an excellent job. So we came under budget by about $73,000 on that. I might come back to this one. I'll go through this quickly. So last time we presented the telecom, Mr. Palermo commented on how RFP in itself is not a reason for cost savings, which I think you're correct. I'm not questioning you on that. But I thought to myself, why did I include it? Because I thought it was a good reason to bring forward. And something I kind of want to highlight is, as an IT division, we just manage a lot of contracts, and the nature of an RFP is extremely time-consuming. So we do have to be selective and strategic in what we choose to compete. And so on the left is the number of contracts by admin, and I represent my division, so IT just has a significant number. Some of that is because we kind of manage other people's contracts, but we still kind of do our due diligence to try to make sure we're paying what we should. And some of the ways we do that is having a monthly contract review that we're projecting months in advance, and we're also planning RFPs years out because of the time consumption it takes. I want to try to compete as much as possible, and the only way we could do that successfully is if we are having that long-term strategic plan. Otherwise, we'd never have time to actually execute an RFP and implement a new system correctly. So I could probably talk about it more, but I kind of want to comment at least why I thought it was significant and why it might be more significant for IT. All right, and then I'm going to go into our operational savings, which I think is the impressive one. All right, so savings are recorded when IT's efforts directly reduce the cost impact against the city. All savings have supported documents. There is no process or procedure for recording savings. This is my representation of how I think it should be presented, and I'm going to speak to it, and I'm going to go into detail, although I think I have to flip that around. Okay, but at a high level, we are claiming that we saved the city $518,000 a year going forward. I could go into every detail on how we're recording that number. I think I might. Let's see if I have time. But I'll go into the highlight. The biggest thing we got that reduction for is on telecom. So for telecommunications, I came in with a budget. So this was fiscal year 2021. I came in February. And the budget for fiscal year 2022 was kind of set up, because I was just coming in, I didn't have time to do it. I came in with an actuals of $924,000 with a budget of $473,000. So that was an immediately need that we need to action something here. From May to December, my team went out and found $440,000 of reductions in the telecom communications bill. That is, things we're able to cut, things we're able to migrate. In May, when we recognized that issue, we also knew that we're going to kick off an RFP, and I believe this came from a recommendation from Councilmember Holt. So we started the RFP process, but we knew it was going to take a long time. RFPs take a long time. So we want to take action, and why that RFP was going on, we went and found 440 savings on our own. The RFP concluded in December. We awarded a vendor, and they went through their audit and found an additional $250,000 in savings. The rest of that number is comprised mostly of contract negotiations, which goes in line with our contract management and why kind of having that monthly review of future contracts is so important. I'm probably coming to time. I won't go into details. I can provide them later. But that number is represented by documentation. I'd be happy to show you guys. I do believe that's a real number. All right. So applaud. That's $500,000 a year. That's $70,000 once. All right, and now, sorry, it gets really boring after the cool part. So from convenience standpoints, we have our projects. We established a project lifecycle that I think is extremely effective. We're able to complete 89 projects this year. I'm going to give you a quick highlight of some of them. Utility bill auto pay. This allows citizens to pay their bills to the phone. Police to citizen web server. This is what allows citizens to pull police data. We've upgraded to a more user-friendly version. Freedom mobile app. This allows police officers to access CAD on their phones. PD Panasonic laptop rollout. We upgraded 200 old public safety computers in a 3-week span. Why I think this is commentable is that we had to act extremely rapidly and had to do it within 3 weeks, or else we'd have to pay another lease payment, which we were able to do from delivery to delivery, 3 weeks. This is one I'm quite happy with. So we implemented a new phone buyback program, which essentially is everyone's phone. We upgrade every 2 years, and now we're able to sell their old phones back. And I think this will be about a $4,000 revenue stream a year. And then Time Clock Plus implementation, which is a new time clock management tool for Rexon Park that significantly reduces manual efforts. And let's go back. And then lastly, documents, which this is very important to me. I'm not sure if the value of documents everyone recognizes. I think I came from a process position, so I understand the importance. I'm going to kind of speak to why I think documents are important and why creating 48 is significant. So process and policy give employees guidance on how to operate. Employees do not need to make decisions on the fly, allowing for more effective execution. Documents allow passing of knowledge more easily. New employees will be able to pick up expectations quicker, and information will not be lost between generations of employees. And document provides guidelines to outside departments, divisions, allowing them to understand the holistic rules that are being asked to follow. So I think this is a huge accomplishment for us. It's given us a lot of guidance. I think we're going to continue to focus on this creation over the next couple years. And that pretty much covers it for me. I'm happy to answer any questions. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you, Mr. Zach. Mayor Wilson.
Chris, thank you. Great presentation. Congratulations on your fantastic first year success.
Thank you.
A couple of follow-up questions, but you can't understate your success and your accomplishments and what you brought to the city. So thank you very much. I know I say that from a grateful mayor and a grateful city council, but I have some serious questions to ask you. I guess the first and foremost I would start off with is, in your opinion, is the worst user in your system Councilmember Palermo?
Councilmember Palermo. All users are equally the best.
There you go. And if you go back a slide, Chris.
Oh,
We're going back to the beginning.
convenience.
To the very last slide.
Documents.
Yeah. So obviously, I know that Councilmember Palermo's gotten with you on the 6th piece down, how communication with mayor and council will be handled from September of 2021. And I know that you were the author of that document, and we have some great challenges. And there's one last piece. I was going back to your second slide. You showed an upgrade in tickets in January of 2022. And obviously, that has something to do with your new council members, Councilmember Hills, Morkland, and Vanstrom, and you didn't comment on it. So I'm very disappointed on you not calling them out. But other than that, man, great job. We're tickled to death. We're so proud that your great work and what you've done in the first year, in all seriousness. Other than the fact that your ecosystem for our SMAC users is an absolute travesty. But, man, we appreciate you, brother.
We're learning together.
Yes, Councilmember Hall.
Thank you, and thank you for a great presentation. Two questions. One on the backups, the backup and recovery. And I know that you get the reports that it was a successful backup. My question is, have you restored from backups? Have you tested? And
Yes, to that point, I do think that is a focus that we need to have. Sorry, there's a document I didn't have that my question on that I'm preparing. That's a focus that I think that comes with all the P's you see for policy procedure, is that we need to be more effective of doing these routine checks to make sure our systems are working. We have done a couple this year. We have done backups just to test to make sure they're working. We actually have done live backups that we need to implement, and they were successful. Additionally, we've done failover tests, such as we have a redundant system that goes from here to Alpharetta. And so we did a redundant test on the weekend one day where we shut off one of the servers to make sure the redundancy actually worked. So that is stuff we are implementing more and more of. I'm sure we need to do more of that. I think it's an excellent question, because that's kind of the strategic vision I have, is making sure we know our stuff's working before we need it to work.
thank you. And my next question is Homeland Security in the past, 10 days, issued Shields Up. And so that's a pretty severe warning for municipalities. And how are we prepared, or how do you feel that we're positioned for that?
So no system is perfect, but we, I think, do everything we can to prepare ourselves. I think to what we commented on the FBI Mitigation Plan, we get those notifications from those security groups giving those recommendations, and that we do follow them to the T to make sure we're doing them. One of those things was the external email banner. I'm sure you guys see, and some people really don't like. But stuff like that, usually when we're putting something forward new, is because it is coming from exactly like you said, our government, the FBI, saying, hey, we need to do these things to make sure you're as secure as possible. So we stay on top of it as best we can.
All right. Any further comments or questions from Mayor and Council? Yes, Mayor Wilson.
Chris, you mentioned, you showed, identified, in all seriousness, a lot of different issues. You and I have talked some about, with you had your big broad brush and you could do what you wanted to. So where does the cloud fit into that? Where does, lessening the severity of leverage that your hardware goes and going to a cloud system, where does that fall into priorities? And
So we talked about this a little bit. I think there are two key applications that will require us to have heavy infrastructure, and I think there's at least a plan for one and a likely plan for another. The first being the CAD solution, which basically requires that we have a infrastructure that keeps the solution up 24/7. That's the public safety thing. That's the lifeline. We can't have that go down. We need top-of-the-line systems to be able to do that. The second is Outlook, which is our tool for communication. So having kind of our email server up and running all the time is almost as important. For CAD, there's a big project, and I'm sure you'll see it in the budget request, that public safety is looking to move to a new solution. And that's where I'm highly recommending and pushing as much as we can that goes to the cloud, or there's a managed service component, because then we, City of Roswell IT, do not need to manage an infrastructure that needs to support such a dedicated and important system. So that's one. The second is the Outlook, which you'll probably see a budget request, probably not this year, maybe next year, of looking at going to Office 365. There's probably a bunch of other things that will come with that outside of just being able to migrate off of infrastructure that requires that dedication. But I think those are the two things that would allow us to start having those conversations of, okay, what do we really need to keep in-house? And we could probably reduce the footprint that we have to maintain.
so, Chris, we talked about that a little bit. So why put off the Office 365 another year?
I would say coming into this position, I didn't have the confidence that Office 365 was the best solution to, as you said, kind of our holistic things. I think it took a lot of thinking and evaluation and really coming to the possibility of CAD leaving the ecosystem for me to have that idea that that could be the best solution, because we then could reduce infrastructure, which would justify the cost. I think without that migration of CAD, it's better to keep Outlook in-house. It's much cheaper, but if we could reduce the hardware, then that question becomes open again of, okay, we can look at removing it. This makes sense? I kind of babbled.
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. So is it ideally that you want it 15 months out, or is it ideally that you want it 6 months out?
I would say once you guys confirm that we're going to a new, maybe not you guys, whoever confirms we're going to a new CAD solution that will not require the infrastructure, then it would give me the leverage to say, okay, we should now look at a different email solution. So I'd say it's pendant on that decision.
So the CAD equation will come up as part of the budgetary process here in the next 2 months. So by May the 9th, we'll have some idea of whether or not we're going to move forward on it, I would think. Is that right, Mr. Fisher? So if you were informed that the council was inclined to move forward with the public safety solution with the CAD piece, would the timetable change?
If I knew on June 1st, well, let's say I knew you were going to approve it now, I would still say it's going to take at least a year to 2 years to implement a new solution. So I would probably be more inclined to request it in the next budget period. If I don't know that approval ever happens, then I might never request it. So that's kind of the timeline.
Okay.
Is I think if that approval happens, then I'll probably request it in the next budget year.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, guys.
Appreciate you, man.
Yes, Councilmember Hall.
One more follow-up question, and I may have missed it. Do we do phishing exercises where we send phishing emails and people get reprimanded once, twice, 3 times? You have to go to school.
Yeah, we did one last year. We will definitely do one this year. Last year was kind of like hey, this is going to start happening. Please don't be too upset. We have to do this. This year, we'll probably have more follow-up. So, yes.
All right, any further questions or comments? All right, thank you so much, Mr. Zach.
Good job. Tough act to follow.
Yes, it is.
All right, next item we have on the agenda, consideration for the mayor and/or city administrator to award a contract to Sustainable Strategies, DC, for grant consulting and advocacy services in an amount not to exceed $90,000 with annual renewal options for a maximum of 5 years. Mr. Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Knighton. See, I followed that business principle that you learned early on about surrounding yourself with good people. It works. So this item is a consideration, as Mr. Knighton said, for the city to go and contract with a company that will allow us to leverage grant consulting and advocacy services. The amount is not to exceed $90,000, and there is some renewals that are in their agreement. We did do an RFP. It was done in November to procure the grant consulting partner, and really what this is going to be for is to assist the city with the all of the federal funding opportunities that are out there, the opportunity for more competitive grants and for the infrastructure funding, and of course, as we're all getting more aware of now, the congressional earmarks. So there were 4 firms that responded. There were 2 that were actually reviewed. 2 of the others were disqualified. We had an evaluation committee. We scored against the criteria that was in the evaluation, and Sustainable Strategies DC is the name of the consultant company that scored the highest. The purpose of this contract, or the proposed contract, has a $7,000 per month flat fee. So we're looking at $90,000 for the year. The scope is what's important. They're going to be doing an assessment and a strategy session with elected officials and with staff to understand what our needs are, what we're looking for. They will put together a funding needs analysis report, which will show us, and we've had some conversations kind of preliminary on this already, it will actually show us some projects. And that's what we're looking for, is to define some projects for the future that we can go out and start looking for this funding. And then they help us with that opportunity research and ultimately the grant proposal development. Now, we have grants in-house that will be doing a lot of this work in coordination with the consultant, but the consultant will be there to bridge that gap in finding out what we need and then looking at where those opportunities are. So you all have approved a one-time allocation of $33,000 for this consultant if we go with DC Strategies for the entire year then we'll need the $56,000 to be added to that budget out of the general fund operating contingency. To tell you a little bit more about Sustainable Strategies, it is a firm that was founded in 2011. The good thing about this company is they only work with local governments. So they are very focused on what they're doing with the federal, state funding, local funding, but working with local governments. The other interesting thing about Sustainable Strategies is their clients are between 1,000 and 200,000 population. So it's not these mega cities that are bringing this particular group in and that focus. The focus is we are right in the middle of the focus of what they do with their business. They have obtained since 2011 approximately $5 billion in awards right now for their clients. And one of the interesting things that we found was for the congressional earmarks that just started last year, as they just came out, they have already obtained $25 million for those earmarks for their clients. So we're very excited. We met with them. We're very excited about them. They are certainly a company, a consultant firm that we would be incredibly comfortable with representing the city, because they will represent the city with our federal legislators, our state legislators, their contacts in putting together these grants and then going to the actual funding sources and talking to them, along with meetings or opportunities to visit with you all with some of these same legislatures or heads of agencies that have these funding opportunities. That was the advocacy side of it that we really wanted to understand. We've not been very active in that. So this is a new opportunity for this city. And we feel very strongly Sustainable Strategies are the ones that can help us move forward with advocacy with our other government leaders. So at this point, our recommendation is to approve the use of Sustainable Strategies DC to work on behalf of the city of Roswell for all these new state and federal funding opportunities. And I will be glad to answer any questions that you may have.
Yes, Mayor Wilson.
Thank you, Chairman Knighton. Thank you, Mr. Fisher. As always, great to see you. Thank you for everything you do for our city. I've got 3 questions.
All right.
The first one is, Mayor and Council approved a one-time allocation of $33,313 on May 24th of 2021. That was obviously a year ago, almost 10 months ago. So I'm assuming that $33,313 has been deployed and has been used in some shape, manner, or form.
We have not. That was for a particular scope of work, and then through other discussions with mayor and council, it was deemed that we need to look at something for a longer term for the year to go out and get this RFP and see what it would be. So we held that money for right now. It has not been used.
So that $33,000, we've not used it.
Correct.
And has not been spent with this particular vendor.
Correct. No, nothing has been spent yet.
So just as a follow-up on that, and it's not where I was going to go, and so is it 33,000, is it 90,000 less than 33,000? Or is it 90,000 plus the 33?
90,000 total, the 56 and the 33 to make up the 90,000.
Okay, very good. So let me ask you, as a follow-up, we had a meeting the other day with Councilmember Hills, with yourself and some of your outstanding grant people. And there was an exploratory perspective on that meeting. And my sense of talking with you and with your excellent folks was that you guys had a really good handle on this, had a really good understanding philosophically, and a pretty firm grip on the grant process and what you wanted to do and what you didn't want us to do, and you were kind of asking some clarity from us. So it seemed like you guys know what you're doing. So I understand. I think sometimes, particularly in some parts of our life, that we probably need to be using more consultants or more lobbyists for particular pieces. But this looks like a new outfit. $25 million in congressional earmarks for a client last year doesn't sound like a big number to me,
Okay.
Particularly if you've gotten $5 billion over the sustainable life of your business, which is 11 years, and there's $25 million in congressional earmarks. So, Michael, why is this a big deal?
So the grants that we're working on that we have a good handle on right now, when a department comes to us with a particular project, we have particular grants that we generally know about. More of the state grants, sometimes the very common federal grants. What we're looking for from Sustainable Strategies is to get a clear understanding of what our city is in need of and are expecting them to find new opportunities for us. We generally go out to those grant opportunities that we're aware of and have been aware of. This is going to open up, we believe, a whole new opportunity, a whole new window for us to find new funding, particularly in the federal lines, with all of the funds that have been opened up over the last couple of years, COVID being, the excuse that everybody has used. There's a lot of funding out there that we've never seen or even been a part of before that they do.
That's been our conversations in the past. That's what everybody's going to kind of in the arms race of running after the fairy tale money.
Yes.
So I got two questions.
Yes, the fairy tale.
To the fairy tale money. Two more questions. So let's treat this like it's a business.
Okay?
So let's say that the city spends $90,000 of the residents' money this year with a consultant that we're making a recommendation to spend. Is it reasonable to assume that there would be a minimal return of $10 for every dollar returned with an expectation of getting a $50 return? In other words, if we spend $90,000 this year, would it be a reasonable assumption, not including the labor involved, deployed to do that, that the city would get at least $900,000 in new grant money that we wouldn't have otherwise found? Would that be a reasonable expectation to put on the council?
I think that is a very reasonable expectation. My only hesitation at this point is what are the projects and what phase are they in? So it's more of a timeline issue. If we don't have projects to be able to get the funds, which is the very first thing that they do when they come in is do that assessment. If we have those projects identified and ready to go, they will get the money, and $900,000 will not be out of the question.
And obviously, we're looking for fairy tale money, so we're looking for $9 million, or we're looking for $100 for every dollar returned.
Correct.
Let me ask you another question.
Correct. But I think that we'll find that if we can give them what we're looking for. That's what they will do.
Michael, I know you're a sophisticated negotiator. I've gotten to know you, and I appreciate your perspective when you deal with businesses and vendors like this. And we got some more to talk about over the course of the next couple of months. I'm curious, obviously in business, if I'm in business like this, I love getting continuity fees, right? I love getting $7,500 a month for services yet to be provided. Have we talked with this vendor, or is the possibility of talking with this vendor of having a different kind of fee schedule based upon maybe perhaps making some investment, but having a sliding fee scale that we'll give you some money up front, but we're really more interested in performance? And matter of fact, you might even get a greater fee based upon your performance, so there might be more money coming to you based upon your level of execution.
Mm-hmm. We actually have, when we first started looking at this, we talked about a fee for performance. The reason that we haven't found that yet in the industry, and I look at Ryan and Danny if they want to include anything they can. The reason we haven't found that anywhere or been able to negotiate that, the work that they do, regardless of whether they get that award or not, is up front. So they're doing the research, they're putting the application together, they're basically doing everything that they're going to do anyway. So if we say, we're only going to pay you for the ones that you win, they've already done all the work on everything up until then, and we haven't found the opportunity to really even open the door much on a pay for performance.
Do you think, Michael, that it's better to invest with a vendor this level of money versus, saying, having another person on staff?
Yes. Well, I'm going to shoot myself in the foot. So you just, but yes, wait. Today, yes. Once we get them on staff, and as the budget moves forward, the reason I'm saying this, as the budget moves forward, you're going to see a request for another person, because I think the business is going to be there that we're going to have to, because we're still doing a lot of the grant work. We're looking for them to find us those grants, but a lot of those grants we're going to be able to administer while they're out doing lobbying efforts on some of the other funding. So yes, right now, this is the place to put our money. I think they're going to make us have to have another person, but that means there's more funds coming in.
So, do we know what that $25 million in congressional earmarks looked like last year? What the portfolio was?
I have no, not exactly. I have a 5-year, 14-page portfolio of what they've done, success rates in the last 5 years.
Did they answer your questions better, like the conversations that we were having with Councilmember Hills the other day with your folks? Did they do would you say, a more concise job of orientating the discussions? Like you said, part of the challenge for a government like ours, yeah, there's money out there, but does it cost you resources and take you off your strategic vision and intentionality, which ends up hurting your effectiveness and ultimately actually costing you money because you chase fairy tale money, right? Are you saying, Michael, that this is going to give you greater clarity in helping us determine this? Because you've got some clarity from the council about vision, about strategy, about plans. You know where we're going. You know where we want money. You know where we need money. So is this for you? What is this for you? Is this just an extra powerhouse to help deliver?
Yes. Well, it's an extra powerhouse, yes. It's to help deliver and to help identify. We will have to do our job up front, which is to help them understand what the vision and the focus is. And that's going to be through meeting with you all. That's going to be through meeting with us. That's going to be through meeting with our departments so that they understand what it is that we're looking for. Where their strength comes in is giving us the information of where those funds are. Which federal agency has dollars for which programs and what focuses. And that's where I think they can bring that to us where we don't have that outreach.
How transparent can this process be? Let's say this comes out of committee, goes to council, gets passed in 2 weeks. And so the council agrees to spend $90,000 over the course of next year. How transparent, and I'm asking you historically as well, because sometimes there's a loss, right? You make a decision to spend money, and it turns out to be not the right decision. How transparent can this process be? If we made a decision to spend $90,000 with this vendor, let's say it doesn't work out, and let's say 5 months into it, you thought, hey, this was a good thing, but it's not coming together the way I thought it was. How transparent can we be as a city? One, to letting our residents know. Two, to letting our counterparts on the staff know, letting Mr. Knighton and everybody else know, and letting the council know, guys, I made this call. I suggested we needed $90,000. It's a bad call. It just didn't work out. This is what I thought was going on. This is where it's not working out. How are we in the process? How have we been historically about admitting to the things that don't work out and kind of changing course and correcting it and being very, very clear about it?
Historically, I don't know that we've been real transparent, but, well, I don't want to say that way. We have not done a lot of reporting out. Danny has all the figures and all the data you can imagine for grants. Periodically, we have done reports in the past of where we're at with different funding that we've received, but it's been more of an issue of the interest of mayor and council. I know this mayor and council looks at things in a much more business attitude. We can be just as transparent as Mr. Zach just was sitting here going over the data, and I suspect we will. I will tell you that I've seen from this mayor and council, if something isn't going well, you all have no problem in saying, this isn't going the way that we thought it was going to go, and we're going to pivot or do something different. We're going to do that same thing because I think you have given us a confidence level to do that. If this isn't working out, we don't want to do it either. It's going to be a lot of work. So we're expecting to see funds come out of this that's going to increase our ability to fund projects with other people's money. If it's not doing that, we don't want to fool with it either. So we will report out at whatever level you need and have no problem doing that, because if you see that it's not working, we want to see that too, so we'll stop it.
And of course, my request would be that you would call that out.
Absolutely.
That's not that the council wouldn't call that out. That you'd say, hey,
Absolutely.
I've got to come to you guys. Look, I made a recommendation. It's not working out.
I have the confidence to do that, so yes.
Thank you, sir. Thanks very much.
All right, thank you. Yes, Councilmember Palermo.
Thank you. So I think some great points. And to the earlier example, if I had any confidence that spending $90,000 was going to get $9 million, I'd not only do that all day long, but I'd be discussing why we should be investing $1 million into this company to get that return. However, based on what you described, I have some concerns with this approach. because it sounds to me like a large part of their engagement is basically repeating what we did with the strategic master plan that we went through last year and kind of combing through all that feedback. If I'm understanding correctly, there was what they were spending, the value they were going to bring is helping us decide what type of grants we should get. Whereas, and I feel we've been hearing that so much from residents, and in fact, you can even see some of it in the 100-day plan. Roswell River Master Plan. I think that's a clear area where it would be great to find some grants. There's a lot of economic benefit. There's a lot of environmental benefit. There's a lot of, resident benefits. We have some challenges with some fire departments. We have some police needs. We have an incredible bike ped master plan, which got incredible input from the residents, which we do not have the money to fully create. And so I think my concern is that we have a lot of big needs, and we don't have a lot of time, in the sense that it's everything I've been hearing is many cities, many counties, many states, they're all competing for this type of money, and that's where I'd rather see us just going forward trying to get the grants. And that's where I do challenge the fact that if we could get somebody in-house that's going to help us, obtain these grants, manage these grants, whatever, then I see that as a better spend. If there's, whether it's this firm or another firm that can really hit the ground running, that's something where I could see the value there. But I challenge the $90,000, and I challenge the process from the way I heard it. So please let me know kind of what I misheard and what I misunderstood for kind of what the engagement is.
So I think that this firm can do exactly that, is hit the ground running. The gap that we have right now is exactly what you said. There's other cities, there's other entities that are going out there going after this money. My question is, what money? I don't know what money. There are so many organizations right now, there are so many agencies right now that have millions of dollars sitting there that they want to put out into the economy. We don't know what all of those are. We know the normal ones. We know some of the ones, the CDBG funds, some of the funds that we get for the COPS grants and things like that. We know what those are. This company already has relationships with these agencies. They already know what they are. All they need to know from us is, where is it that you want us to put this money? I can hire somebody to come in-house, but then they've got to learn what we're doing, what we want to do, and then I don't know what their contacts are. That's what these people do. So maybe we didn't explain, maybe I didn't explain enough in the background, but I think for $90,000, we're getting a team that is ready to hit the ground running. All they need to do is come in here and sit with us and go through an analysis with, what is it that you want us to be looking for, and then they match those funds with us much sooner, and they know how to compete for it. They know who to go talk to. They know how to get the name Roswell in front of somebody else that's not doing that. So I think this is exactly what you're going to want to see.
And so I'd say I definitely trust your judgment on if these are the right experts that have those ins and that understanding, that we don't have staff or be able to hire staff that would have that. My issue is, from what I saw, the way it appeared to me was $90,000 was including a long process for them to try to figure out, as if we were a brand new city, and haven't been hearing from residents the last year or two of our many gaps and many needs.
They'll hear that from us. That's the very first engagement they have, is with us, for us to be able to tell them what we need and what we're looking for.
Yes, Councilmember Hall.
Thank you. So the way, I'm looking at it this way. As Councilmember Palermo said, we've got a bike ped master plan. We have the parks plan, Riverside plan. We have an arts program that we're looking to fund. Those are three areas that they can hit the ground running. The way I look at it is, they do arts, culture, and historic preservation. I'm just on their site and a little bit familiar.
Right.
Just looked them up before. Transportation infrastructure. I mean, we could pick 3 or 4 things and say, we're shovel-ready on these, or we can be shovel-ready in matter of days or weeks on some of these programs. So I think the opportunity's there. I also understand that they don't have a client in Georgia.
Correct.
And so we would not be competing at
Which
the
is
state
good.
level
That-
against other Georgia municipalities. On the federal level, everybody's competing, of course, and this might be an opportunity for 12 months for our people to learn and work alongside them and maybe get some training so that perhaps after the first year, we could look into hiring somebody, if it's successful, adding somebody to our staff, or even our staff would have some tutelage or maybe learn a few things. So I support this.
It's interesting that you mentioned that, because I think that same thing, I don't know if it's a 1 year, if it's a 2 year, or what that is, but I think this company gets us going right now, rather than us getting somebody in up to speed and doing that. But it doesn't mean that over time, we can't do that same thing. So I kind of agree with you on that. I don't know how long we'll use them. I don't know. It depends on how much money they bring to us, for one thing. We may continue. But the fact is, a lot of this we can do, which may be why we have that new person coming in, maybe in this next budget year, depending on how quickly this goes on. They don't have anybody in Georgia. We talked through that during our meetings with them. A lot of times when you go out with a consultant, you want to say, well, what do you know about our area? How many do you know? And we do this city and this city. In this particular case, we're not competing. We have our own voice now, one time. So we think that's probably going to be an okay thing, that we're not competing with a bunch of other cities within the same state to try to go after the same money.
Yes, Councilmember Hills?
I agree there, and I think that what this company would lend us is their expertise in some special money that's coming across the desk right now that I'm confident with our grant team, what I've seen so far. So I know that you guys would be able to perform, but I don't think you've been out there digging up those kind of resources that are popping out on the daily. And I've talked with Mr. Blitch and some with Mr. Alfred as well.
Right.
So I have confidence there. The other thing I wanted to ask is, so I agree, I think this is a great opportunity for us to outsource. And then if you could walk us through like how this will impact our staff. So where you are right now, if you're out there looking for something, and then what this will do to our existing staff workload, how that'll play out, where it gets handed off to a department, where it comes back to you guys or this consultant.
Okay, if you don't mind, Danny, would you mind coming up and maybe addressing that a little bit? Because my vision for this is this firm is going to be the firm that's out there identifying the fund, understanding what the projects are, identifying the funding, helping being an advocate to receive that funding. A lot of the administration and the writing can be done here with their guidance and direction, but I don't want to put that on Danny when him say, oh, no, we're not going to do that. So,
well, thanks for the question. I think that one of the things that we discovered during the RFP process is that there were about 10 grant proposals or programs that they were prepared to help us with for the 90,000. So that is something that can be changed, or that is something that is kind of a carefree flowing number, but that still leaves us with hundreds and hundreds of other opportunities that they can identify for us that can match projects up. They've got this process that they use of determining which projects go where. They're going to create a grant calendar for us, so we'll know which projects that we're working on, which ones they're working on, which ones lobbyists are working on. We feel like that this is an opportunity, yes, for us to learn, and we do think that they have some experiences that we can benefit from. We also know the city of Roswell like no other group who writes grants for the city of Roswell. So we feel like that we can help them be successful. We feel like that we can write the kind of grants together that can get funded and get the the community projects done that you guys have wanted done for so long. What we discovered through the strategic planning process is that a lot of the projects that were identified weren't grant fundable. They were beautiful, they were wonderful, they were projects that everybody is successful, excited about, but they didn't have the grant fundable piece. And so that's kind of the critical element. And there's so much strategy that goes into getting lobbyist dollars. There's so much strategy that gets in, getting a federal earmark into a federal agency's budget. We have to know the dollar amounts. We have to know the match amounts. We have to know if we're going to overmatch. We have to know what strategy we're going to deploy, whether it's environmental, whether it's, whether we're serving people, because we don't compete well if we're trying to serve people who, are poor and disadvantaged. That's other cities. This city has to focus on things that we're good at, which is creative and innovative. I think we're going to work well together. That was a terrible answer, wasn't it?
All right, no, that's fine. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, Councilmember Borthland?
So you were hitting on the 10. I heard you when you first got going on 10. So refresh my memory real quick. We're talking about 10 grants that we can write through these people or ask these people to write on our behalf. Is that right? How do we make a decision who gets that 10 within our city?
That's a great question. That's one I asked, and they did not answer. They said we get to decide. It was their answer.
And then I'm seeing that we're paying $7,500 a month on this, $90,000 a year. Is there, in my world, I call it a prepayment penalty. Is there a way of getting out of the contract, or do we have to satisfy that contract for the full year and not renew?
So we would be signing a 1-year contract, and we would have the option at the end of that 1 year to not renew if that was the decision that the city made. But once we sign on for the year, we would be committed for the year.
Even if they don't perform, there's no way of getting out of that.
Well, if they don't perform, that's a different story because they're not meeting the scope of work that was in the RFP in terms of, coming up with the needs assessment, advocating our behalf, writing grant proposals that we're directing them to write. If they don't result in actual awards, I think that's a decision that we would make internally of they didn't meet our expectations, and we may not want to renew with them. But in terms of performance of the contract, that's what was in the scope of work, and that's kind of a different story if they don't meet that. I'm not sure if your question was more if it doesn't result in money being awarded to the city.
Well, my concern is when you enter into a contract with a specialist that we talked about here, and let's just say they lose some of their heavy hitters within the company, and they say, oh, it's going to be fine, we'll take care of you. Well, all of a sudden we're putting our trust and our funds in the hands of people that have not been performing at that point. However, we're still trusting Sustainable Strategies DC to perform. That's kind of what I'm getting at. Let's say they do lose some of their good people. We're still trusting that they're going to come through. There's no guarantee on that. That's on the side. That's just a question.
Yeah, I think they would, regardless of people that come and go, they're still bound by the contract to provide to us what they've contracted to do. Could it impact their ability to get us funding? That's a possibility. We didn't really get the sense, I don't think, from talking to them that there was an issue with turnover or an issue with, staffing or anything like that, but I understand what you're saying.
All right. Mayor Wilson?
Couple of questions. I'm going to ask Mr. Fisher, can I start with you? And I'm going to go all the way across. Don't go anywhere. Scale of 1 to 10, confidence level in this vendor. 1 being the lowest, 10 being the highest.
Wow, that's a tough question because I've never been in this particular industry where we're doing this kind of advocating before. I think they're extremely good. I'm going to say a 8 or 9. We'll see.
Yes.
I guess my answer is that the last 10 to 12 years, federal appropriations have been a non-issue for the city of Roswell. And so we're returning to this space. We were successful in this space years ago. So I do believe that we have a good opportunity for success. I'd have to go with the 8 or a 9 too. There's things outside of our control. Like we don't get to decide what gets put into the federal authorization bill.
Absolutely, but you do, just your appraisal of this particular vendor.
Oh, yeah.
If somebody can get it, I think they can.
Okay. Ryan?
I'm good with an 8.
8, so 8s, 9s. So I had a couple other questions, but in the interest of, I will say this, if this were my business, investing $90,000 seems like a reasonable assessment and risk. And I would make the recommendation to spend the $90,000 if it were my business. It's a tougher equation when I'm talking about spending my fellow residents' money. But based upon my belief in y'all's professionalism and that you have a high confidence level with this organization, I'm going to join Councilmember Hall and recommend to the council moving forward on this piece. Thank you.
All right. Okay. Yes, Councilmember Palermo.
Thank you, Mr. Knighton. So my issue here is not with the confidence in the firm and not for some of the duties that I think they can provide a lot of value in. My kind of concern is really purely on the fact that this 90,000 quote is including what I see as an extensive needs analysis, meeting with all the city departments, and basically figuring out operating and capital budget needs for that standpoint. Whereas I feel the city's done so much work and staff, I feel, is really been marching forward so efficiently, even just the last few months, that I just have concern with them going through their normal consultant checkbox and spending a long, drawn-out process, which is included in the $90,000 piece for the needs analysis, whereas I actually feel staff is really, to me, seems so much on the same page, and this would be, be able to be knocked out in a single, public work session or committee meeting or council meeting on answering the questions there, that I'd prefer to find some way to ensure that they are really maximizing the grant proposal development time and the funding opportunity research time, and to make sure they're not just padding some of the 90,000. Or, of course, I'd love to be able to reduce the amount, but I'm guessing they probably don't have a whole lot of interest in reducing the amount for an accelerated needs analysis, a more efficient needs analysis period. So that was the point that I wanted to raise, and just for your discussions with them.
I appreciate that. That's a point well taken. The learning curve will be steep, and we'll make it as steep as we can to get it done as quickly as we can. But I understand what you're saying. We got to bring them up to speed somehow, because I think their strength is once they understand where we're going, what our focus is, that's when they go out there and find it. And I think that's what their strength is. It's up to us to get them ready to go out and find it.
And what does the process look like? So let's just say, again, I expect the Roswell Parks River Master Plan to potentially be an item. So let's just say, actually, let me rephrase that. How would it be determined which ones they actually end up going for? Because I see they will develop a final needs analysis report for the city's review and approval. Okay, so this would come to the mayor and council's approval for what that report is and where their priority list is.
Yeah, this first year, I don't foresee them going after a whole lot of anything that we don't already have a need for. So, once they look at what we have, if they immediately think, oh God, we got something for this right away, I know exactly who to go and talk to, that's probably gonna be our number one. Do we care if the $3 million is going to this project or this project? If it's two projects that we know we're going to be doing, I want them to tell me that. So they're going to have some input into which project. We're going to have some input into saying, here's the projects that we're focusing on that we know is in our strategic plan that we know we want to do. And they go, we can this one, we need to get on that right away. Here you go. So that's kind of my idea of what we're going to be doing once we get this assessment done, is they're gonna understand what it is we have. And I'm hoping right away, there's some low-hanging fruit that they're gonna know, I know where we can get funding for that. And that's where we get started.
And I agree completely, and you just raised another point for me as well. You know, my hope, obviously, there was a previously passed strategic plan last year. My hope is that we'll see in committee discussion to really update that plan. But hypothetically, if this is moving fast, the currently approved plan, there's some things on there I think this mayor and council very much agrees is an absolute priority. There's probably some things in there that perhaps a previous mayor and council saw as a priority, perhaps not this one. And I just want to make sure that this mayor and council is absolutely approving which types of grants they're going to go after.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Yes, Councilmember Hall?
Just a follow-up question, and I imagine that you've already identified, if you do engage and we move forward with this, there are grants, COVID-19 and ARPA, and there's a lot of opportunities there, which you don't need somebody really to assist you with that. I mean, you want these people to find the ones that we as everyday working people probably would have no knowledge of. So how are you going to manage that, or is there some language that you can put in there that you've got cures and that type covered?
I don't know if there's language that we would put in there for that. I think that's more from a management standpoint, but
We did include in the scope of work that anything, basically like formula grants or anything like that, or entitlement grants. I mean, we're not gonna ask them to work on that because obviously we're getting that. Grants that we're used to receiving, we wouldn't be asking them to work on. Basically, I think they're at our direction and at your direction in terms of what grants they focus on. That's part of the needs analysis that we'll work with them to put together. And we had discussed the possibility of having some sort of, committee or something from all departments represented to be able to kind of guide them once we have direction from you all on what grants to go after, what makes sense.
Yes, Mayor Wilson?
Ryan, dumb question. You don't have direction from us at this juncture?
Yes, we do. I just want to make sure we have direction, but, just to get I think we had heard comments about, making sure that you all have the final sign off on kind of what the priority list looks like.
direction as far as what project specifically we're talking about.
I mean, just because I think Councilmember Palermo and Councilmember Hall's brought it up, but like we know what direction we're going.
Yes.
Like there's clarity on this, right? I mean, that's not this. There's not a surprise. I would fully think that you guys could sit down with the vendor or any other vendor and say, in 2 minutes' time, this is where the city's going. We have clarity from the mayor and council. We know what their vision is. We know what their plans are. We know what their priorities are. These are the projects that they are ready to go on. Can you deliver? Can you help us deliver? And for this process, I don't think, I would get some pushback. I'm pushing back, forgive me. The more it's orchestrated, like the orchestration you're talking about is on their level, at the level of sophistication on their level, and the pieces that you're not going to see. But our pieces should be pretty simplistic. Right? This is not we already know, don't we? And so how deep of a needs analysis do we really need to do? I guess is what I'm asking. Like
The needs analysis is for their behalf. When I say they're going to come in here and perform a needs analysis, we're going to get together, we're going to get a group of people from the departments and say, here's our needs. So we're going to be able to do that to them. It's called the needs analysis, but it's more for them than it is for us. We're going to be directing that. And to Councilmember Palermo's point a minute ago, and I didn't make this comment, but I will now, since we're still kind of talking about that, from the strategic plan level, I'm not totally naive. I know we have an adopted strategic plan, but I also know we're right in the transition of the middle of an adopted strategic plan. And so that will certainly be taken into account when we sit and talk with them about our strategic moving forward. We know what's out there We know what's approved and we know what's out there. So, yes, we will be directing that conversation with them. The needs analysis is for them to understand what it is we're doing.
So so this process doesn't become too bureaucratic. This is a vendor, right? This is an entrepreneur, fairly small company. So how long does it take for them to get activated? Get your needs analysis, get up to speed running, start getting in the grant application business?
I think they've set aside 2 days to come here and learn about what our needs are. So, and I'm sure it will require some time, other time for them to put all that together, but
One day, 85,000, call it a day.
No, I think they're a good size. I think they're big enough to get done what they need to get done, but they're small enough. They can get here. We can meet with them. We're not meeting with somebody that's got to go and share information with a whole nother department or division. So I think it's going to be a good fit.
All right. Any further questions or comments at this time? If not, I will entertain a motion to move this item forward. Yes, Councilmember Hills.
I motion to move this forward.
All right, motion from Councilmember Hills. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second from Councilmember Hall. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? All right, all in favor, it passes unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We appreciate
Thank you.
that. We're gonna go with it.
All right, good deal. Item number 4, discussion of the unofficial, unapproved transcripts on the website. Mr. Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Knighton. So we've been talking about and looking at where our transcripts land. I want to talk with you all for just a minute. So if a resident or somebody interested in our meetings and our business here at the city goes to our webpage and they want to try to look and see where transcripts are, unofficial transcripts are, when they go to our webpage, they'll go to the government tab, which they may be familiar with if they've been to some of the agendas and briefs and minutes before. Well, let me start at a different place. Let's assume that somebody has no idea what they're looking for. They just want to see if they can find transcripts. They're going to come and look across these tabs. They're going to find the government tab. They're going, okay, well, there's city council and the mayor. There's agendas, there's boards, there's committees. Hey, there's council meeting video. Okay, here's council meeting transcripts. So they go there, they click on it one time. It takes them to a page that has all of our unofficial transcripts for all of our meetings. So they go down here, they say, okay, I want to look at one for mayor and council. They click on that. It was last year, it was in 21. They click on that. There's all of our 21 meetings. Let's see, I think it was back in September. They click on that, there's the transcripts. So if somebody has no idea and they're just trying to search for it, if they find government, they look under government, they go down through the government tab, and they find this one that says meetings and transcripts. They click on that, it takes them right to the page. If it's somebody that's more familiar with what we're doing and they've been to the meetings and the briefs and things like that before, they can come on here and say, okay, well, I know I go here when I'm going to look for the minutes in the meeting, so let me go there. All right, they go there. The first thing that they might notice is the number 1 tab on that screen is the unofficial, unapproved transcripts. They click on that, it takes them to that same place. There's all the different meetings. It's a mayor and council meeting, what year it is, and what you've already seen. You click on that and it goes to it. So if they're somewhat familiar with our system, they're going to know to maybe go to the minutes and briefs. If they're not, they're going to find transcripts. If they're really not, and oddly enough, even though it's number 1 at the top of the page, that can be just blinding to some people, and you don't even see that. So they go and they look and they say, okay, well, I'm looking for these minutes. I'm looking for these meetings. Okay, it was in 22, and it was back in the first meeting in January. Okay, let me see. I don't see it anywhere on that. And then they look at the bottom. They go, okay, well, wait, right here's transcripts right here. They click on that one, and it takes us there. And they're back on that same page. So there is currently 3 different places that somebody could go in and find the unofficial transcripts. What there is not is they're familiar with coming to our meetings. They go to our meetings. There's a regular meeting here in February of 2020. Okay, there's the agenda. There's the agenda. Oh, here's the minute. No, I'm looking for the transcripts. There's the audio video of it so I can watch it. but there's not transcripts on this particular tab, on this chart, and there cannot be. So we checked with our software vendor, what you see is what you get for these particular tabs. They're identified off of what already goes in, and they're already set up that way, and they have no capacity for another one. So if we wanted to put it particularly on with that meeting, we cannot put a unofficial transcripts column. And I hate to hear from a vendor, no, but I heard from a vendor, no. They actually, to be honest with you, aren't really supporting this particular package much anymore. This company, it was a great company, bought the meeting management software program to get into that particular part of the industry, and they just got what they got. Now they're developing another one that I think is going to be really good, but I'm not sure it's got all the features this one has. So from an agenda standpoint, it's great. We can manage the agendas, we can get the items in, we can move them around. You all have seen it. Everybody that works in the city is comfortable with it. Not that we can't change, but to put transcripts in these columns, we cannot. So we have made it number one on this screen. We have made it on its own on the homepage screen. And we've actually made it, if they look through here and they can't find it, if they make it to the bottom, they find it here. So that, I just wanted you all to see where it's at right now and what your staff has done to kind of put them out there. But I know there's been some interest in trying to tie them to this meeting, and the only way to tie it to a meeting is to go to that page and tie it to the meeting yourself, whether it be in 20 or 21, whatever it is. Then there's all of the meetings for mayor and council. You click on that, and there's the transcript for the meeting, unofficial.
So thank you, Mr. Fisher. I mean, when did the update on the left side of the regular screen come? Because that is I definitely like the more places, the better.
This where I'm at now,
No,
we're back
no,
here
the previous
on
one.
this particular screen.
When did that come there?
That just added, didn't it, after our discussions
Okay.
to make it more prominent?
Okay.
It was just at the bottom.
Yeah, because
And
I definitely like it up here as well, making it as easy as possible. I do really wish we could have it in the same row, because for a lot of residents that do just get used to searching for the date. So I wish that, but I appreciate you looking forward. I appreciate you being proactive and looking to do this here. And also something to call out, I think in the agenda it might have mentioned that I requested this, but literally every single elected official has been certainly in any one-on-one conversation I've had, just talking about how can we make things easier for residents, more transparent, more open. And so this was just something that came to mind, wanting anybody to be able to look that up. So again, I like it on the left. I wish it could be there, so I guess keep me posted if the vendor, changes their functionality. But in general, just really looking for always any opportunities for making things easier for resident, and really give us the opportunity to practically spoon feed them, because they obviously have their lives to live, and we're fortunate to get to serve them.
I think it's a good point on the homepage, on the web page. For those that are familiar with us, they may already come here. For those that aren't, that are just looking, it is identified as that, so that they may not know to go to agendas, minutes, and briefs, but they see transcripts right here, or if they go into the minutes, they now see it right there. And I think that's, for right now with what we have, that's what I think what we can do. If something changes later on, we can identify it with the meeting. We know that's out there. And you notice this item is a little, we're going to continue to do items this way. We'll put them into the department to be able to discuss them like we're doing now.
I appreciate the effort you put into this, and hopefully some residents watching, maybe that some of them didn't know how easy it was to search for that. So
Yeah,
hopefully
there's
they
a
got nice
couple different areas.
little training from you.
Good, okay, thank you. And I don't know if there's anything else. If y'all have ideas that you come up with along the way, please let us know. This was just for discussion today, but if you see things, let us know.
Mayor Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Fisher, can you pull the website back up?
Absolutely. Matter of fact, I have it right there.
Beautiful, beautiful background. Search. What can we help you with today? Go back to where we were, just a second. What can we help you with today? Go back.
I want,
Oh, the I want to?
No,
no, that other one, that white, go up right there.
Right here.
Look at it.
See the
Oh,
open
what can I
box?
help
Yeah.
you with today? I'm
I
sorry.
do transcripts there too.
Transcripts.
Yes.
Just type that in, please, sir.
And it takes you,
Unidocs. The fourth wave, I didn't even mention that.
So I have a follow-up
Thank
question.
you.
Thank you. So I have a follow-up question for particularly Councilmember Palermo and Councilmember Hall. Can you guys inform us, there's something we need to rectify in reference to transcripts or minutes that got changed in the last year or two that we talked about, and, you know, there's so many things that we talk about that we forget about some things, but it reminded me, there's something y'all have talked about that we need to correct.
Yeah.
For the record, about transcripts or minutes, can you address that?
Sure, and it's basically, they used to be official minutes. So they used to be transcripts of all our words, say at the dais, et cetera. And basically we would vote approving them, and where they would show would be, you could go to a single date and it would show in the row. You could click brief minutes, which is how did each person vote. You could go to just full minutes, which is every single word that was spoken. And there were a lot of residents that relied on that because it's very easy to search, just type in a search word, what was being discussed, et cetera, and really following it that way because you can obviously read faster than you can talk. So a lot of residents that don't have time to listen to the full meeting, that's how they were doing it. The good news is, when Councilman Member Hall got elected, she was a key member of the vote to bring them back. But the feedback I had been getting from some residents was still that it was hard to find, and the big reason why was you're used to seeing it in this row right here, and so it's not there anymore. So you had to just scroll to the very bottom before they added that. So Michael can just scroll to the very bottom. So it was just basically residents weren't realizing to look right here, or used to doing the search, they just saw them gone. And so that's why I like two things. One, I like that Michael just pretty much gave us all a training, gave the city a training for anybody that listens in, and they put it front and center right here. So anybody that does want to still use the transcripts, they are now front and center, which is literally, you said you updated that in the last week or two. So just making it easier to access.
But Mike, tell me, am I wrong? Isn't there something that we need to correct about the minutes or something that got changed?
The only thing I've heard of was this and the movement, et cetera. So what I'd encourage is for any residents listening in right now, of course, to email mayor and council and just let us know any feedback and anything to improve. But I think it was just a matter of ease of use to be able to access and quickly find. So my hope is this does make it easier for everyone. But of course, if anyone's listening and they have some feedback on something we should fix or improve, then I'm sure this mayor and council will be all ears.
Christine, do you remember?
I just know that when I was installed, that was one of the first things that we did was brought back the minutes that had been stripped by prior administration. So that's it that I know about.
Thanks.
And Mayor, this may also, I'm just sitting here thinking Julie, she's not here, so this probably lends itself very well to an instructional 2-minute video on click, click, click that can go on our YouTube page also, where a citizen can look up transcripts and find out how to find them. So we'll take care of that.
I think that's a great idea, Mr. Fisher. And obviously, the person most equipped to do that is the one person here that can actually talk faster than most people can read, and that would be Councilmember Palermo.
Gotcha.
Yes, Councilmember Hall.
This is a related question. Boards and commissions, are they Facebook live streamed and are they video recorded?
no, they're only audio. The boards and commissions are strictly audio because we do need to have somebody from community relations who would have to be at those meetings. So at that time, we had chosen just to have it for the council and committee to have them videotaped. I mean, they've been videotaped for many years, those meetings.
I've had feedback from residents as to wondering why the board and commissions aren't video videoed like the rest of the
It's a
meetings.
staff.
It's just a capacity
It's a
issue.
staffing issue.
But the audio is available live?
Yes.
Absolutely.
And that's available on the city website and on Facebook, or just the city website?
I think it's-
Where can somebody go and listen to a board and commission meeting? I found that residents have some frustration in being able to find that.
But like I said, just like on the top on that banner, when that meeting is going on, a boards and commission, they would be able to be listening to it live while that meeting.
So
is
direct
going
them
on.
to,
So it's in the same place as all the other meetings. You go to design review board, you go to that meeting, and there's the agenda packet, the briefs, and the audio video.
and they should click there and they can live
Same place
listen
all
to
the
it.
That's how I listen to it.
Yes.
All right. Any further?
As a matter of fact, we could listen right now if you want.
Yeah.
It's
Any-
live today at 5 o'clock, so.
Jackie,
further
unfortunately,
comments
has
or
a
questions?
PC.
All right. Okay, this was a discussion item. Thank you for the information.
All right, thank you.
All right. We do not have any items from finance. From Recreation and Parks, item number 5, River Parks Master Plan Update and Amendment. Mr. Leatherman, thank you.
Thank you, sir. So, organized here. Thank you, Mr. Knighton. Wanted to spend a little bit of time going over some priority recommendations of the River Parks Master Plan. Continues to be a priority of this mayor and council. And just want to make the mayor and council aware, I've made a couple of adjustments to the slides that you'll see tonight. Generally about the same as what's in your packet, but a couple of amendments, hopefully for some clarity and discussion's sake. And wanted to give some background, which I'll go through, and kind of where we've been since 2016, some of the accomplishments, but then really look at some recommendations and changes out of some of the dialogue that we've had together as it relates to moving forward, specifically around ASAN, river sedimentation, and some of those project constraints and how that will influence the River Park Master Plan, and then potentially some priority recommendations, and as well as some amendments to the master plan as an outcome moving forward here in March, April, and into the very first couple of days of May. By way of background, 2015-2016, the River Parks Master Plan was adopted and approved. This was really the first document that we use in moving forward in how we tackle recommendations for the River Park and its improvements. As part of that, in 2018, at the time, Mayor and Council wanted some clarity and understanding on the potential economic impact associated with various projects. And so we updated and created the Economic Impact Report and Assessment. That came with some recommendations of projects that could and should go first based on the economic impact associated with it. Which is where we have the ASAN Park. And I'll talk about that on the following slide, in the bottom of this slide. 2018, Phase 5 of the River Boardwalk system was completed. Happened to be one of my very first ribbon cuttings in my ongoing rainy day ribbon cutting adventure that I've had. And point of fun fact, it rains every time I do a ribbon cutting, so bring an umbrella. I'm batting 100%. The 2019, the Fitness Trail Loop was awarded $100,000 grant. It requires a 1-to-1 match. In 2020, that's where we have the ASAN Phase 1 and Phase 2. There will be a larger slide a little bit later in the presentation to understand, but Phase 3 is the yellow side, which also includes the building. That was a $349,000 construction or design contract that is currently in the permitting process for this spring. We're also working on a communication plan, which was funded in the 2020 year. 2021, Mayor and Council authorized 2 grant applications. We were unsuccessful at both of those grant applications. We've got word here in the last couple of weeks, which is our February and March 2022 project update and milestones. As we look at the total cost and estimate for ASAN Phase 1 and Phase 2, about $6.4 million is required to activate both of those projects. We've also been working since 2019 with the Chattahoochee Riverlands Project, which is a 100-mile stretch starting at Lake Lanier. And this is a regional approach to how we look at connectivity from Lake Lanier past and south of the city of Atlanta. We are a large component, about 6 or 7 miles of that connectivity, and one of the most developed. When you look at the Chattahoochee Riverlands website, you'll see many of the city of Roswell parks highlighted and showcased as the future of what that connectivity can look like. So something that we're very proud of. And so you have some permitting on the milestones, and we'll talk about a little bit of where we've been in some of those investments so far. In the middle, you'll see the Boardwalk Phase 4. Just wanted to touch a little bit on that. We talk about the importance of investing in the river park system and why it continues to be a priority for our community. When we opened up Phase 4, we're averaging roughly about 350,000 trips a year on Phase 4 and Phase 5 of the river boardwalk system. Now, we count the trips going out and back, so cut the people in half, and about 150,000 people total using that portion of the river park system. And so we know that it's in high demand. We had a chance to celebrate today with the Chattahoochee Nature Center as they continue to expand their bridge and boardwalk system and have that opportunity for interconnectivity as we continue to move through our priorities. So as we get into some of the details, Phase 1 is on the right-hand side, which is a fitness trail loop that connects Don White Park into A Sand. Phase 2 is that center chunk between the blue and the red line, which is our children's stormwater garden and some parking support areas along with some open lawn space for special events. And Phase 3 is the conceptual design of the building. And this is generally out of the principles of the current River Park Master Plan. As we start to have discussions about what are we seeing on the river, we know from all of our users and from our personal experience that we're seeing ongoing silt and sedimentation impacts on the river. We had at one time the Threet family that was mining in this area. We purchased A Sand, which is this project site, from the Threet family quite some time ago. They were mining under a lease agreement that was providing a significant amount of benefit to our community by removing that material and continuing our depth in the river. Since that mining has stopped, we continue to see silt and sedimentation, and this mayor and council asked us to start to look at what are the impacts associated with that and what are the recommendations moving forward. And that's what you'll see here in another couple of slides. Just so you can see a little bit more of the connectivity with ASAN Phase 1. Don White Park is that large parking lot. You can see the volleyball courts, the existing buildings and structures, and the fitness trail loop and how that connects in and adjacent to Phase 2, which is that blue line there. So as we start to look at answering the question of what are we going to do about silt and sedimentation, it causes us to take a pause and truly look at where should that activity at least be considered first and foremost if we need to look at silt sedimentation and sand removal out of the Chattahoochee as a operational constraint when we want to develop the river park system. And what I think I'm concerned about and what I'm hearing from mayor and council is that we don't want to build parks and box us into a corner where we don't have options to solve a problem that we know exists. And that is some of the driving force to have a conversation about what do we need to amend as part of the River Parks Master Plan and our strategy moving forward. And those are the recommendations that you see here today. And in our preliminary conversations and trying to understand what the best path moving forward is, especially around the regulatory constraints, our recommendation right now is to pursue a concept that would allow for some sort of mining operation at the ASAN site because that's where it was beforehand. And so from an environmental impact perspective, we have the ability to potentially leverage some of that past disturbance before we start to look at park development. And so as you see, the recommendation before you in fiscal year 23 is recommending funding and moving forward for ASAN Phase 1 and 2. We'll want to look at here in the next 30 days whether or not moving from ASAN Phase 1 to ASAN Phase 2 is the right decision. Because again, I don't want to make a recommendation to this mayor and council to start building parkland in areas that we could potentially need for mining operations. Prioritizing the material mining and logistical solutions for sedimentation through mining on the Chattahoochee River. Those would be our two priority next steps. And what that causes us to look at is an impact to phase 3, which is that building site, potentially phase 2, and I'll go back to the photo here. So phase 3 on the left-hand side of the red line, potentially some impacts in phase 2, depending on what a mining and material removal process would require. And that's a question that we don't yet have a lot of clarity on, that we're going to be working towards in the next 30 days to try to understand from an industry perspective, what are our solutions, what are our options, and how do we look at strategy moving forward. Also developing conceptual improvements for Azalea Park, including the impacts of stream bank erosion. And this has to do with revising and relocating the building, that if we're moving some building operations around, and we want to talk about restaurants, we want to talk about cafes that are included in the master plan, how do we balance those between Don White, potentially Riverside, which you'll see in the next couple of slides, and Azalea, to make sure that the entire River Park system is moving in conjunction with each other. And so I know I just kind of unloaded quite a bit of information as we get into priority 1. I'm going to stop there to see if there's any questions or step information that I've missed in your understanding of where we're moving forward.
Yes, Councilmember Palermo.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Knighton. Thank you, Mr. Leatherman. So with your I have some questions and comments on the actual plan, but first I want to start on this slide.
Sure.
So with your recommendation, there's a part of it I'm very supportive of, and there's a part that I'm not.
Okay.
Which is I absolutely want to see phase 1 and phase 2 funded. I do not want to wait till FY23. And so I basically want to look at really the fact that we've had these plans for a while. There's been a lot of progress in kind of what's necessary to move forward, and I don't want to wait another month, never mind another few months. So I'd like to see this moving forward. But regarding the bigger conversation, can you go back to that great picture that had the blue line and the red line?
Yes.
Yeah, this is a great picture. Thank you. Mm-hmm. So to be clear, you mentioned that due to the challenges, there's discussion of where that building should go. And although I very much want to move full speed ahead personally with phase 1 and phase 2, as for phase 3, I think that will require some larger discussion. I've certainly been getting some feedback from residents really questioning the investment in a type of use that wouldn't necessarily be enjoyed by enough residents to justify the cost. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure there's pros and cons to both sides, but that's a discussion I'd like to make sure that we as a community have. And then my question is, if this mayor and council does decide to fast track phase 1 and phase 2, first of all, the existing yellow house, or whatever that is, that's covering the phase 3 property, right?
It's located in the phase 3 section.
Okay.
Up there near the church, top left-hand corner of the
Okay, so therefore, by moving forward with phase 1 and phase 2, still gives time to decide what, if anything, should be done with that.
That's great.
Thank you for clarifying that. And then my final question is, if this mayor and council does fast track phase 1 and phase 2, by leaving phase 3 still open, does that still give you flexibility for coming with different suggestions regarding the dealing with the river challenges of the sediment?
It's a great question. The answer is I think so, but not sure. And really the challenge is I don't know what the footprint is going to be required from an ideal kind of mining and extraction perspective. And that's my biggest constraint right now with where we are working forward is getting that next level of understanding of how much space is necessary versus how much space is desired, and where does the answer fall in the middle of that. And so I believe that there's project expansions and scopes that we can manipulate as necessary to be able to answer that question. On a worst case scenario from a funding perspective, we're in the permitting process. We know that if we get authorization that we can initiate the bidding process here in late spring, early summer, shovel ready and starting to move dirt, which would be the intent of August and September.
Now with that, you mentioned, it's currently in the permitting process, and then what I'm hearing is once permitted, starting the bidding process?
No, we would run those simultaneously.
That's where.
There's some timing that we wouldn't want to get too far ahead of the permitting process when we initiate the bidding process. So essentially, they would all land at about the same time, and we could issue a notice to proceed with permits in hand.
Gotcha, okay.
All right, yes, Mayor Wilson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Councilmember Palermo. Go back to the drawing if you don't care,
Sure.
Jeff, because I
Sorry.
think it's important to illuminate. So one of the things I want to give massive credit to this council, Jeff, to you, to Mr. Knighton, and to the entire staff leadership, and to the leadership of council. Because phase one and phase two are, as Councilmember Palermo, is we can't wait to get ready. We can't wait to get going on this. However, if we look at phase three, that ostensibly is where Ace Sand itself is. And what we know today is that is where the mining operation, from the best we can ascertain, is going to take place. So phase three, just from a standpoint of what we know today, practically speaking, will not look like it is on this piece of paper, and so, or on this particular drawing. And I think, to your point, Councilmember Palermo, I think in our discussions is that that particular building is not something the council and mayor would probably be in favor of. But from a practical perspective, I don't even think it's relevant, because this is where we're going to have to figure out how the mining operation takes place. And I can tell you that from what we've discovered, for example, we had hopes that there might be a beach. But the reality is that from a mining operation perspective and the different levels of viscosity coming out of the sand of the Chattahoochee, is the practicalities of that happening are slim to none. So what we've got to discover is, obviously, can we get back into the mining operations? Do we have a vendor to do that? How that gets executed on a daily basis, and most significantly, in terms of the scope of this project, is it not interfering with the beauty of the phase one and phase two project, and that's part of this figuring this out. So it's the only thing I would ask us to be a tad cautionary on is when we say we're ready to go in phase one and phase two, and I'm in complete agreement, I think we need to have some understanding of what the mining operation looks like and how it will impact phase two. So I just want to say that, because we'll revisit this again and again. And as you see the plans there, what we know today is it's highly unlikely, phase three will not look like as phase three is currently pictured. But we also know there's going to probably highly likely be a mining operation there. And that mining operation, how that impacts phase three, what that looks like, is yet to be determined. And that is, you're going to have a good understanding of that, hopefully by April. Is that right, Jim?
Yeah, that's my goal, is coming out of getting direction and having this conversation is a higher level of confidence. I'm pointing in the right direction with this mayor and council, and then giving a little bit more detail and a lot more detail on, okay, what does this solution potentially look like, and bringing that back to you. And you'll see that in my recommendations in April as we dig in a little bit harder. You know, from a phase one perspective, you know, and we want to get moving on something. I'm confident that we can move on phase one and not have any impact as it relates to the mining operation, because mining didn't even happen in that section of this park area from a high intensity perspective.
Well, Jeff, I just want to interrupt you, because I think it's really important for our residents to know the responsibility of this council and the responsibility of staff. That's as exciting as the River Parks Master Project is, and as excited as we are to move forward on it, as much as we've talked about it, is that this council and staff have showed the discipline of saying, look, if you don't solve the dredging equation, if you don't solve the mining equation, don't waste our residents' money on the River Park Master Project. And so I think it's amazing the amount of progress that you guys have made in the last 60 days on the urgency and the expeditious nature of finding solutions on something that previous to this particular council and mayor and staff was seen as unthinkable, undoable, and untenable. And in 60 days' time, that equation started to change because of the leadership of this council, and because of Jeff, your leadership, and because of your leadership, Randy. All of a sudden, the solutions they're close, and they're soon to be brought to our fellow residents, and that's a big deal, and you can't overstate it enough.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Wilson. Yes, Councilmember Moreland.
Two quick questions. Can you discuss the differences between mining as compared to dredging for the environmental impact? And also, how do we find a local river mining operation? Do we have somebody that we can look into?
So just in some preliminary conversations, the mining and dredging, really the mining is looking at what kind of material is potentially usable from a commodity perspective. Can it be reused in construction? Can it be reused in landscaping? Where dredging is really more about widening or digging out what would be a harbor bay, river bottom from a navigation perspective. And that's really what we're looking at. And the previous operation was really that top sediment deposits on the river. The Threet family was looking at, sand and how they could sell that as a valuable commodity from a construction perspective. And essentially the concept right now is duplicating that same type of operation. The challenge is that we just have a lot of unknowns. To the mayor's point, is just starting to scratch the surface on, okay, we know what the problem is. We think we know that at least we have a very high-level conceptual solution because it's been done on this site before. How do we reactivate that same conversation out in the public and in our contracting and potentially partnership world? And that's really the next step beyond this meeting that I start working on tomorrow, is how do we activate that type of solution and hopefully finding some partners that we can start to work with. The reality is we just don't know right now. Again, we know that it's happened before. We know that there's a value. We know that the permitting and authorization is possible through the regulatory agencies. And again, in having this conversation, making sure that I'm pointing in the right direction and then going and working on execution.
Thank you. Any further comments or questions at the moment? All right, seeing none, I believe it would be in order.
Just have a couple more slides, just as we start. That's okay. That was the big bulk of this. And as we look at priority 2, there were some conversations about prioritizing Riverside Park and looking at the redesign of buildings, stages, special events, and those park amenities as a follow-on priority, that as we start to look at the solutions and hopefully come to some conclusions, after sand, where are we going next? And this would help us to start to carve out that and answer that question of, conceptually, we look at Riverside Park and what do we need to do from an improvement perspective there? And then priority 3, this is a T-SPLOST funded project, is the design, implementation, and work on the multi-use trail. This is a conversation that can be part of the strategy with T-SPLOST 2 of where this fits in the puzzle. I just wanted to make sure that we keep this on our radar as a priority, since it is included currently in T-SPLOST 2 as a funded project. We can look at design options and then hold off on the construction depending on what the expenditure strategy is there. But just going back, we've got the priority 1 becomes the focus, then we roll off to 2 and 3. And as I look at deliverables based on those priorities, is coming back in April at committee, having a better feedback on project and planning estimates along with timing for all 3 priorities, an update on the ongoing permitting process, and then any necessary updates and recommendations for amending the 2016 Parks Master Plan and hitting that early May date to ensure that we've got that done correctly as well. And so that's where I'm headed, and happy to take any feedback on pieces of the puzzle that I'm missing.
Any comments or questions from Mayor and Council? Okay, all right.
That was it.
That's it, okay. All right, thank you. So you'll be bringing this back,
Yes, sir.
right? Based on any potential feedback from Mayor and Council, and then we'll move toward a formal endorsement and approval of these amendments. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. All right. Yes, Councilmember Hall.
And just a quick question, what is the alignment in the timing with the Riverside Road Transportation Project?
Which the Riverside Road that extends in front of the property and church?
Yes.
It's probably helpful maybe if I run back here. And so we've accommodated, and this graphic doesn't show it very well, but almost where the red line is, we've accommodated the alignment of the trail itself and potentially any on-street improvements that happen at that intersection within the ASAN driveway access location as it's currently designed and laid out. And we are working with transportation through their stakeholder and design process as we understand kind of where some of those improvements. I think that the general consensus is not to duplicate improvements, meaning we wouldn't have on-street or in right-of-way multi-use trails because we have them already adjacent to this space and being able to capture and use what we already have. So answer
Yeah,
the question.
yeah, I just wanted to confirm that everybody's walking in lockstep with each other and nobody's counter.
Great question. Yes.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Leatherman.
Bet.
Exciting project. All right. The next item we have is from Community Development. Consideration of the approval of the amendments to the 2040 Comprehensive Plan. Ms. Lenore Bromberg, thank you.
Yes, apologies, Jackie had to go start planning commission, so you're gonna get me. Hopefully I can do it as well as you would.
Right.
I believe this is ours. Just a little bit of background for you. The 2040 Comprehensive Plan went through a very extensive process. A draft document was brought forward for review, and there were some comments that were provided just shortly before the document was transmitted to the state by council members. Those were taken to the 2040 Comprehensive Plan Stakeholder Committee in July per council direction. I'm going to present those results to you as a part of the conversation tonight of what the Stakeholder Committee recommended to come forward. But those recommendations are what this council, or the council initiated in November as a text amendments essentially to the comp plan. So council did adopt the document in October. In October, we initiated those amendments that were brought forward by the Stakeholder Committee. We did do a couple of weeks, a little more than 2 weeks of public input that was gathered both through the website as well as a neighborhood meeting, which was held on January 13th. And then the Planning Commission saw these same text amendments in February to make recommendations. So what we'll present to you in the packet are the text amendments as they were brought forward, how the Stakeholder Committee responded to those, how the public responded to those, and then the Planning Commission recommendation for those. I do have for you in the slides tonight, this has been broken down. Could you help me pass these out? By some map categories, but I've got a one-pager so that you have it all on one page if you would like. It is color-coded as closely as possible to the pages so that we can keep them all straight. You should have seen Jackie and I trying to get that together so that we could keep everything straight and make it easy to follow. So just as a reminder, we do have these character areas that are across the entire city. All of the blue areas are what we refer to as our established residential areas. And then the kind of shades of orange and pink are going to be our activity and employment areas. Our commercial corridors are green, red, and kind of a lime green. And then the conservation green space is kind of its own category up at the very top. And that's the biggest change between our former future land use map and this is that it used to be only 1 or 2 shades of blue, and now we have 4, so that we would have that broken up. And that's just to kind of give you an overview. And then what we're going to go through is each of the character areas where there were amendments that were brought forward. So the first is a state residential character area, and the recommendation that was initiated by council was to remove civic from the state residential character area. This was supported by the Stakeholder Committee at a vote of 9-4. There was public input, was also overwhelming support at 267-99. And the Planning Commission did recommend keeping civic and not removing it. So they had the opposite response as the Stakeholder Committee and the public. One thing I will note, when you see these public input numbers, they're not gonna always add up to be the same because not everybody responded to every comment. So the pages that could be voted on at the neighborhood meeting, not everyone voted on every item. And then on the website, you also had the option you could skip one. So if you didn't have an opinion, you didn't want to vote yes or no, you could just go to the next one. So the numbers aren't going to be 100% across the board. I know that can create some confusion, but that is what we got. Is there any questions on this one before I move on as far as the way that the numbers are and the information being presented? So the second page of the two-pager for estate residential includes some implementation strategy bullets. The text change here was to remove the word typically from that first bullet. The stakeholder committee supported it, the public supported it, and the planning commission also recommended removing it. So moving on to the next one, maybe. Suburban residential character area. Here it was two recommendations. One is to remove planned residential development, and the other is to remove civic. You'll notice in the stakeholder committee column, there are two numbers there. That's because when we went through the process with them in July, we actually went through every single change individually as opposed to per page, which is just the way that we structured it. It was the simplest way to kind of keep it organized at the time. And then once we had an adopted comp plan, we've been moving forward with the page so that it was in that context. We didn't have an adopted document at the time, so we wanted to make sure that we kept it a little bit different. So the stakeholder committee did support removing PRD and support removing civic. The public supported both of those changes. The planning commission does support removing PRD, but asked to keep civic. The second page of that two-page fold-out is another text change underneath the implementation strategy bullets, and that is to remove what I believe is the 8th bullet, if I remember my count correctly. The stakeholder committee did support this, and this is directly related to the removal of civic from the zoning compatible zoning classifications. And so the public input also supported this. The planning commission, the other was to remove typically from the second bullet, supported removing typically, but wanted to keep bullet number 9 that would go along with their recommendation to keep civic. For neighborhood residential character area, the recommendation was to add RS12 and RS30. I will take a little bit of a side note on this. This was actually a text edit that was caught by the stakeholder committee during their review process that they sent to staff, and we missed it in the email that they sent to us. So this was actually voted on individually by the stakeholder committee overwhelmingly to support it 14-0. And it was a text edit, not necessarily a change. The map had been, and the text had been shown to include those throughout the process as they were going through with the stakeholder committee. And we just missed that it had been dropped off when we got to this point. And so that is the add-on for those. The other two is to potentially create RS24 and to remove planned residential development or PRD. The stakeholder committee did support the consideration of creating RS24 as well as the removal of PRD. The public input was that they agreed with all 4 of those changes. For planning commission, they did support the addition of RS12 and RS30. They do not support the removal of PRD, and they don't believe the creation of RS24 is something they would recommend. I know this one is a little more complicated. Are any questions about this one? Okay, great. So next we have the active neighborhoods. Here the change is to add RS18, and that was supported across the board by all 3 groups. For neighborhood serving character area, this one is related to the map itself, not necessarily to any of the text that's on the page. And it's related to the changes in the area. So the first one I'll refer to is on the left side of the map, and that is the intersection of Crossville at Crabapple, thank you. And the change had been recommended, instead of that being classified as Parkway Village character area, to move it into neighborhood serving character area. And so the recommendation from the stakeholder committee is to not make this change. Well, Crossville changes into Woodstock at that intersection. So yes, you're correct. It's 92, I guess, is probably the better thing for me to say. The other, and that was supported by the stakeholder committee, and it was supported by the public. However, the planning commission did not support changing that to PV, if I said that correctly. Let me make sure I have that correct. No, they support it. I apologize, the way that I worded that. That says, do not change Parkway Village neighborhood serving character area, and that is the recommendation. Do not change it from PV to Parkway neighborhood serving character area. And then the second one is over on the right side of the map, and this is the area that is around the old Roswell Road at Old Ellis intersection. And if CX is added to the industrial flex character area, which we'll get to in just a moment, then the change in this should be to the industrial flex character area to go along with it. And so there was a support, you'll see later, to make that change, and so this map change would also be supported.
Can you help me understand this one? So
Yes.
the CX, so I can understand why adding the CX, given the other items that are there, but help me understand why change it to industrial flex character area.
The area around it is industrial flex, and so that was the recommendation. Let me go to that page, and it might make a little bit more sense. So it's a hole in the middle of an area that's already industrial flex, and so the recommendation was, well, if CX, which is what those areas are zoned and could potentially be zoned to, is added to this character area, which it was not before, then they felt it made sense for cohesiveness to leave that as industrial flex and not to make it a standalone neighborhood serving area.
And what is that CX, or what is that CX parcel? That's the little island?
Harlow Townhomes.
That's the Harlow Townhomes, okay.
What is that?
The Harlow Townhome development. And there's some other parcels that are affected as well, but that's the bulk of those.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. I'll go back to, so the neighborhood serving character areas, again, it would be to not change the area at the intersection of Woodstock and Crabapple to neighborhood serving, but leave it as Parkway Village, which is what it is today. And then when CX is added to industrial flex, that we would make that area that is noted as industrial flex as opposed to the neighborhood serving area. For commercial mixed use, the recommended changes, or what were brought forward as the text amendment, was to add residential cottage court, or RCC, to remove residential multifamily RM3, and to remove residential mixed use RX. All three of those were supported by the stakeholder committee. They were also supported by the public input. The Planning Commission's recommendation was to add the RCC, but to keep the RM3 and keep the RX. For the major activity area, again, recommendation to add residential cottage court, remove RM3, residential multifamily, to remove residential mixed use, to remove commercial heavy, and to remove industrial flex. All 5 of those were supported by the stakeholder committee. The public input supported all 5 of those. For the Planning Commission, they did support adding RCC, but they recommended keeping RM3 and RX, and they did support removal of CH and IX. And then there were no changes to the historic area downtown, but for consistency, we want to make sure we, yes, sir.
Sorry.
Yes, Mayor Will. Sure.
A previous slide, just so I just want to make sure I don't misunderstand. So the stakeholder committee overwhelmingly says yes. Public input overwhelmingly says yes. The planning commission on the 2 last items is in disagreement with the stakeholder committee and the public input?
Actually, they're not. So the first one, RCC, they support. So it is add RCC and remove the rest. They do agree with adding RCC. They do not agree with removing RM3. They do not agree with removing RX. They want to keep them instead of removing them. And then they do support removing CH and IX, which are the last 2.
So the planning commission is in opposition to the stakeholder committee and public input
Correct.
on those 2 items?
On 2 of the 5 items, yes, sir.
The 2 items are RM3 and RX.
Yes, sir.
And RM3, of course, is residential multifamily, and RX is residential mixed use.
Yes, sir.
And our planning commission took an opposite position,
On that,
just
yes,
to
sir.
be clear.
Yes, sir. They did that on a few things. Yes, sir.
Interesting. Okay, thank you.
You're very welcome. So again, no changes to the historic area downtown, but we just want to make sure we kept all the pages in there. And then for the industrial flex character area, this is what we were talking about earlier with the map change. If the commercial mixed use were added, then the map would also be reflected to move that area to industrial flex. This was supported by the stakeholder committee, the public, as well as the planning commission. So both the map change and the text. The second page of the 2-pager is to insert mixed use shall at the beginning of the 8th bullet. That was supported by all 3 groups. For Highway 9 character area, the recommendation was to add residential cottage court, remove residential multifamily, and remove residential mixed use. Stakeholder committee supported all three of these. The public supported these. The planning commission did support adding RCC, the residential cottage court, but they did recommend keeping the residential multifamily and residential mixed use.
Just to be clear, Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mayor Wilson.
just to be clear, so same situation here, Highway 9 character area. Stakeholder committee overwhelmingly says, we support these three recommendations. The public support says we overwhelmingly support this. And our planning commission rules, votes in opposition to
Yes.
both those positions
Yes, sir.
on 2 of the 3 items?
Yes, sir.
Wow, okay, thank you.
You're welcome. So for Parkway Village, this is related to the map we discussed earlier. Do not change Parkway Village neighborhood character serving area for this particular intersection. The stakeholder committee supported this, the public supported this, and the planning commission supported this. For the Holcomb Bridge Road character area, the recommendation was to add Parkway Village, remove residential townhouse, and remove residential multifamily. The stakeholder committee voted or supported these. The public input supported these. Planning commission did support adding Parkway Village, but recommended keeping both residential townhouse and the residential multifamily. For the conservation and green space character, there were no changes. So just as a point of reference in the presentation, we did include a summary of the initiated text amendment, what page they're on, in case anybody wants to go to the comp plan to look at those pages. And then includes the stakeholder committee vote for each of the items, the public input, as well as the planning commission recommendation, and then the vote that was done by planning commission on each of those. I'm happy to go through each of these, but I figure you've got the summary, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. One other point of clarification I was going to make. The stakeholder committee as a whole was, I believe, around 30 members. It was about 8 to 10, and Councilman Plummer, if you remember how many were from council were on there, and then all of planning commission, and then there were a bunch of other folks that were on there.
It's about 20,
and so
20
during,
people, if I remember correctly.
right, so for the stakeholder committee meeting that we had in July, I believe it was about half, if not a little bit less than half, of those members who were available to attend, because we reconvened them. So I just wanted to point out that the votes, even though they are in support of it and everybody in the room, those votes are counted. It was not a representation of the entire stakeholder committee, just because we had, basically they were finished with their duties, and then we asked them to come back, and with the time turnaround that we had, they were not all able to participate. So I just want to make sure that was a point of record.
Yeah, and I do see, I will say it's still a significant number in the sense of there were still 9 people for some of the votes, for 13, so it was still a majority of the stakeholder committee, but obviously great to see with the public input.
Yes, we
clearly
got a lot of great public input.
Yes, Councilmember Palermo?
So thank you. So I have a couple things. First, so first of all, thank you for walking through that. I think that was a good representation and I think very clear. I will be looking, either making the motion or hoping for a motion that will move this to the next regularly scheduled mayor and council meeting, which would be March 28th, and also with some clarifications in here, I think, to make it easier. And so I kind of want to walk through some of that. One thing is I'm going to be looking to, given the fact that there was never any definitive viewpoints on the RS-24, in my motion, I'm not going to even just include that. I just feel it's kind of a distraction. We'd have to create a new zoning code. We already have RS-18 and RS-30, in which case if a developer wants a bigger lot, they can go RS-30. They want a smaller lot, they can go RS-18. So kind of a distraction to potentially discuss adding that new piece. So that will be in there. And also, for just clear, because I think this is a big deal, and I'm hoping we'll certainly get some good discussion and good input at the mayor and council meeting. To make it more clear, I think if we could have it be all the same way. So basically, so right here we have, on the left, we have remove civ, stakeholder committee 9-4, public input 267 to 99. And then on the other side, we have keep civ 4 to 0 to 1. And I'm wondering if we can kind of keep it all identical. So basically, remove civ Stakeholder committee agreed 9-4. Public input agreed 267 to 99. Planning commission disagreed or recommended denial or whatever that right wording should be. And I noticed this actually, if we can go to just another previous example, like the Holcomb Bridge one, that's actually where it popped in my mind. If we go to the Holcomb Bridge,
Right.
but for all of these, well, so no, this one, oh yeah, see, you have remove RTH, 8-3 agree, keep RTH, 5-0 agree. It's kind of more of they were recommending to deny the proposal to remove it. I just feel like it's kind of confusing because at first, when noticing the Holcomb Bridge Road, it was actually on one of the earlier Holcomb Bridge slides.
So
But
the only question I would have for you, as long as it doesn't create confusion, because the motion that was made was to keep RTH, not to deny the change. So as long as that's okay with you guys, that whatever we put on here isn't gonna match the actual motion made, we can certainly present it that way. I just don't want that to, sometimes when you change those words, it creates more confusion.
In reality, so I did listen to it closely, and I'd say from a motion standpoint, ultimately, keeping RTH was not the discussion. The discussion was there's a proposal to remove it, and either they recommend approval or recommend denial. By saying keep, I think it's taking away from really what we're listening to and really what their role is, which is to provide recommendations.
Sure.
And so that's where I just want to, because I very much appreciate the discussion they had and listened closely to everything the Planning Commission discussed and voted upon, just as I very much value the public input and am so impressed by the large amount of people that provided, just as I really appreciate all those stakeholders that chose to show up and chose to discuss all this. So I think it's just more clear for mayor and council as well as the public if it's aligned, so we can just see where is their agreement, where is their disagreement. And if anything, I certainly noticed it was interesting that the stakeholder committee, it looked like basically agreed with the proposals 100% of the time, if I read it correctly. Public input agreed with the proposals 100% of the time. And then planning commission, it looked like 50% of the time they agreed, 50% of the time they disagreed. And so I think it's just trying to make that more clear for when we see that.
And we can absolutely do that. I just want to make sure that we point out up front that if someone pulls out the meeting minutes
Yep.
from planning commission, the terminology won't match. And as long as we're on the record with that, I'm totally fine with doing that. That's easy to do. This was a challenge to put together, so anything we can do to make it easier to understand, we're happy to do.
Excellent. And then can we go back to, so the only other ones I want to address are, one was the IX. So this one, so basically, because I do support adding CX to IX, so that in my motion tonight will certainly be included. But then what I want to actually discuss with staff and this council, this mayor and council, is so therefore, if I'm understanding correctly, staff saying because we're adding CX to industrial flex and we have this area that's surrounded by industrial flex that is already zoned CX, then it would make more sense to make it all right here, in which case I agree with that. I'm curious if anybody disagrees with staff's recommendation there. So unless I hear otherwise, I'd want to see it where it does involve moving this to.
And these were not staff recommendations. These all are council recommendations.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. So, I know
Staff
CX.
recommendations you did in the adopted document before it was sent to the state. So these are all new recommendations that came from council after that.
Even the change this industrial flex character area?
Correct.
Okay. Well, so either,
One that Jackie talked about?
it might have been, I'm not sure.
Now, this was in a list of things that we got from council members during the review of the draft document and before we presented it to you to transmit it to the state back in June timeframe.
Okay.
Might have been late May.
So then, in that case, I'd like to actually, just for it to be clear on that council meeting, for this to be changed instead of if CX added to industrial flex area, but just like earlier you wrote right there, you didn't say if add 6 commercial mixed use, just have it kind of aligned so it's clear, hey, this is what's being voted on. It's being voted on to change this location to become industrial flex character area.
Sure. Maybe what might be easier is if we separate these out and we talk about one with just the text change for the zoning and then that separately. This is how they were presented to the public, so I don't necessarily want to recreate the wheel, but we can certainly do that and say,
agreed.
because you've done this, and when we did this actually with the stakeholders, it was much easier to do because we talked about the compatible zoning table first, and then we'd add the text changes, like the typically, for example, and then the map changes. So when we present it to you, we can do that based on that kind of sequence of events that needs to happen, so that we look at the text changes and then I can wipe that out. I can find a way to maybe do that where we present one and then the other. Since you have supported this, this would be the next change that would happen. Would that make it a little more clear to do it that way? Okay.
And then my final question is, in listening to Planning Commission and reading through our mayor and council emails, there was a lot of discussion around Arnold Mill area.
Correct. So I'm going to get to that in just a moment. I have more items for you to consider tonight. I just want to make sure we went through the stuff that was initiated by you first, and then there are 2 additional items that were brought forward that were not initiated, so they did not get advertised and through the public process, and we want to make sure we understand how you would like us to move forward. So we've got a discussion item at the very end of this, once you're ready.
Perfect.
Yes, Mayor Wilson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Lenore, just to be clear, these items were initiated by mayor and council.
Correct.
They were sent to the stakeholder committee, reviewed them,
Yes.
voted on them, looks like overwhelmingly. Then they were taken to public input. Overwhelmingly, public input agreed with the positions of the stakeholder committee, which were the positions of council. And I'm just astonished. I mean, just looking at this as a resident and mayor, I'm astonished that our own planning commission, looks like I see a consistency here, is working in absolute opposition to council and mayor, in opposition to stakeholder committee, in opposition to public. And I'm wondering where this comes from. I'm wondering how philosophically the planning commission takes it on their own inertia to take, I'm just astonished. I'm astonished if this comes from council and mayor, it's reviewed by stakeholder committee, it's reviewed by the public, how the planning commission, I am astonished. And it looks like it's all based upon, I keep seeing 2 designations there. And I guess, I am astonished. Talk about not following the will of the people, and having your own set of agendas. This is surprising to me, and disappointing, to say the least. So thank you.
All right. If there are no further comments or questions at this point, Ms. Bromberg, please proceed.
Absolutely. So as Councilman Palumbo alluded to a moment ago, there are some additional input that we've received, and I've got 2 items that I'm going to bring to you. This first one's a little bit longer. So during the neighborhood meeting, there were some residents that came forward with a discussion and brought to I think maybe even discussed with many of you at the meeting, did also discuss with staff. This is the area of Arnold Mill Road, Cagle Road, Eachus Road, and Cox Road, and I'll have a map for you in just a moment. The residents did communicate with staff and council members at the neighborhood meeting, and they've also emailed, I believe, all of mayor and council at the same time. I don't know how many of those communications came in, but I know at least I got a few of them. And the request was to look at changing some of the parcels that are located in the area that I described, and I'll get to the map in a moment, to suburban residential character area. One of those parcels that's included in the area right now is currently in the neighborhood serving character area, and then the remainder of the parcels are in the neighborhood residential character area. So let me go to that map really quickly. This is the map that was actually provided by the residents. And so the area that's surrounded by blue is the area that they are suggesting that you consider changing to suburban residential character area. And they've provided some justification that I'll read aloud just for the record. They indicate the majority of this area is not currently served by sewer and therefore has limited developmental potential beyond residential uses at densities that currently exist, which is RS30 and Ag 43. That's the 2 colors that you see within that blue boundary. In addition to sewer limitations based on the objective criteria established during the comp plan stakeholders committee process of evaluating the existing road system capabilities, the above designated area best fits the suburban residential character area. If you have any questions about that information, I'll be happy to answer them. I will note that sewer is available in the area. There is a lot of property that is on septic because at the time either it was allowed to be septic and there was a lot of sewer in the area, and there was a period of time where there was a moratorium for sewer development because this all goes across to the north of us. And so the county had put a moratorium on that, but it has been lifted, and there are sewer lines in the area. there's just a lot that would probably need to be expanded. I know one of the conversations I had with the residents about that statement was that if the character area alluded to sewer being available, that it meant anybody on septic was required to convert to sewer, which isn't true. You only have to do that in a situation where if you're going to replace your septic because it's failed and it's past its capacity, the county may ask you to connect to sewer if it is near you and not replace your septic. And if new development comes in, then they would be required to look at a connection to sewer as a starting point. That's a county requirement that they would make them do. So that was just a clarification that I wanted to make sure I provided.
Yes, Councilmember Hall.
Thank you. I just wanted to elaborate on this. So several people or a few people on the stakeholder committee, we had a lot of discussions after the areas were identified and basically recognized that when this was, and I don't want to say it was erroneously, but it's probably more appropriately suburban residential based on the criteria of the infrastructure in the streets and looking at the direction of the streets that are there and what is in that area. So that is how this came about.
So just some additional information. This is looking at the area of requested change. And just to note, there is a parcel located at 12870 Arnold Mill Road that was that bright pink parcel I just noted a minute ago. It's not included in this. Those are the character areas that are currently included on the map today. And then zooming in just a little bit further, just so you can see the relationship. The brighter blue that you see to the upper left of the map is a state residential character area. Kind of this medium blue that's in the very middle of the screen is the is the neighborhood residential. The in-between shade at the very bottom of your screen is suburban residential. And then the very, very dark blue, just as a point of reference, is active neighborhood. So the request that's being made is actually to change it to this lighter blue that's at the bottom of the screen, which would be the suburban residential, just so that you can see it in context with the other character areas that we currently have.
Yes, Councilmember Hall.
And that aligns more with the streets. You can see the street patterns in there, and the darker blue has more intense street and infrastructure than the estate and the residential.
And just as so the estate is the brighter blue, and they're asking for the one in the middle, which is down there. Okay, just making sure. There's a lot of residential terms, so I have to use the colors to keep them straight myself.
Any further questions or comments on that particular item?
And then we are looking for direction on if this is something to continue to bring forward to council, and if there's anything that you would like to see in the agenda item.
Yes, Councilmember Hall.
That would be my motion to include this with the rest of the amendments, because it doesn't make a lot of sense to go to the state twice, once for the others and then a month later to go for these, to just package it all together.
And that's our current plan, so great, thank you.
All right.
All right, and then I have one more item, and that is there was a discussion about removal of IX industrial flex from the Highway 9 character area. This was actually an item that was brought forward by council as an item for the stakeholder committee to review. They did not recommend the change. The vote was 5-6. So split down the middle, but with a slight lean towards not accepting it. And so we were requested to present the IX industrial flex use comparison to the commercial zoning classifications, CX, commercial mixed use, CC, commercial corridor, and CH heavy. So this is in your PowerPoint handout that you were provided. There's several slides, so bear with me for just a moment. But what we did provide for you is all of the different uses that are allowed in the CX, CC, and CH zoning classifications today, as well as what's allowed in IX. And just to go back and remind, what we're looking at is if we remove IX from the industrial flex character area, remove industrial flex from the Highway 9 character area, looking at if that's removed, what other uses are still allowed in CX, CC, and CH that basically cover it. And so when you go through the table that was provided to you, you'll see that down the line, pretty much anything that's allowed in IX has some sort of availability, whether it's conditional, limited, or permitted throughout all of the uses. And we'll continue down through these, and I'm gonna highlight, hopefully it will show up, when we get to it, that there are 3 animal care outdoor, all light industrial except as listed below, as well as all warehouse and distribution that are currently allowed in IX but are not allowed in CX, CC, and CH. But down the rest of the way, those are the only 3 that don't have some availability of use within those other 3 character areas. Zoning classifications. And then that's the bottom of the table for the accessory uses and the last half of that. And so just want to bring that up for discussion and not sure how you would like for us to bring that forward.
Yes, Councilmember Palermo.
Thank you for showing what those 3 different uses are. So basically, the thing that stuck out to me was warehouses. Can we see what the on the map?
Yep, sure. Bear with me one moment. So we're looking at the Highway 9 character area, which is this green, and removing IX as the zoning classification.
I lean towards, so this was something that staff had brought on, and I thought was interesting knowing that Highway 9 is a commercial corridor where there's a goal of having, this activity and frankly, that warehouses, et cetera, are not going to bring more activity to Highway 9. So I lean towards wanting to go with staff's original bringing that to our attention, but definitely curious for this mayor and council. Basically, should Highway 9 to north of Holcomb Bridge Road, should one of the compatible future zonings be warehouses, or should it not? Or should warehouses be something the mayor and council still has the authority to approve, but it's not something that's recommended? Because that's an important clarification for everyone. Just because we delete something from this doesn't mean mayor and council can't approve it going there. It just means we're not advertising to developers that it's compatible future zoning.
Any other thoughts from Mayor and Council? Yes, Mayor Wilson?
Yeah, Mike, a little clarity on the warehouse and distribution piece, looking at it here under IX. And obviously, you've got all light industrial as well, and animal outdoor, the 3 classifications. On the warehouse and distribution, is there something that gives you pause there? And when you're thinking about it, north of on Highway 9, north of Holcomb Bridge?
It's, and I'd say actually even some of the light industrial as well, is it's truly on Highway 9. It's what's connecting from Holcomb Bridge Road up to the Alpharetta border. And are there better opportunities than just turning that into an even more industrial type area? And so that's where I take a little pause.
So, for example, where from Mansell just south going towards Holcomb Bridge Road, that area is part of it. And currently there's a strip shopping center with the O'Reilly's. There's a O'Reilly's Auto Parts, a Krispy Kreme. I mean, would we like light warehousing in there? Or light industrial and warehousing, or would we want some other type of development? That's the question.
I think, and for me, I was thinking, I guess probably more north of Mansell, right? And then between the intersection of Holcomb Bridge and Mansell. That's a good point, Christine. But the clarification of warehouse and distribution, there are probably some businesses you would probably be interested in, and there are probably some businesses you would not be interested in, frankly. And so you think it's a wiser option just to take it out of the mix. But if you might give yourself some more room, I guess is what you're saying.
There's still even if it's removed, someone can still apply for it. It's just what ends up happening is staff recommends denial because they'll say we're not advertising this as a compatible future zoning, but then mayor and council could then decide that they do want to approve it. Whereas if it's left in, then staff's going to recommend approval, which is that the situation that's preferred for mayor and council then to have to make that decision.
Any further questions or comments at the moment? All right. Yes, Councilmember Hall?
Could you go to the where the industrial flex map is? So this is an area where we support light industrial and warehouse in all this pink area. Is that correct?
IX is one of the compatible future zonings for this, that is correct.
And that's just one block perhaps off the Highway 9 corridor.
southern portion,
So it's not
yes.
like right up against Highway 9, but just one little section in.
For the southern portion, that is correct, yes.
All right, yes, Councilmember Palermo?
And I would say with the map, I mean, that pink area is somewhere I support it more than truly being right on Highway 9, which is the green.
Yes, Mayor Wilson?
Thank you, Chairman. That's a great distinction, Christine and Mike, and I appreciate that clarity. Thank you.
All right, okay. Any further questions or comments? We'll entertain a motion if the committee is ready. Yes, Councilmember Palermo.
So motion to move this forward to the next regularly scheduled mayor and council meeting on March 28th, and including discussion and opportunity for vote of the Arno Mills area based on the feedback I heard during the planning commission, and then as well with just staff understanding that RS 24 would not be included, and there was one other thing. Councilmember Hall, was there something else that? And the IX discussion that we discussed, as well as for right here, this last one of removing it from the Highway 9 area.
Right.
Yep.
All right. Councilmember Palermo with a motion, yes. Councilmember Morthland, or is there a second? I'll ask for a second first. Is there a second? Second from Councilmember Hall. Further discussion, Councilmember Morthland? All right. Thank you. All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
May I ask just a quick clarifying question?
Yes,
So
clarification.
the way I hear it is that all of the recommended text amendments, with the exception of creating RS 24, would be brought forward. We'll clean up some of the presentation as we discussed. And then the map amendment regarding the Arno Mill area, and then the IX removal from the Highway 9 character area. And is the presentation that we provided, do you want a repeat of all of that same information, or to simmer it down now that you have the background to the actual recommended change?
I would like the cleaned up version that we discussed here to be a part of the public record for anyone that is attending the council meeting. As for what you present, if you prefer to simmer it down, I think it is helpful and important to show really the stakeholder committee, public input,
Absolutely.
planning commission, and all that for
That would
each
remain,
item.
yes, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's all I needed. Thank
All
you.
right, with a motion and a second and clarification, any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? All right, passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Thank you.
And Mr. Knighton, one clarifying thing. So on that slide, sorry, Lenore. So even just an example of trying to get it all in unison. So we have support 11 to 0, support 240 to 30, and then we just have recommendation add CX. Instead, I'd want it kind of just all aligned so it's clear. So for example, here, I would expect it to be support 6 to 0. And because they're all, and I understand the reason you did it because they said the term was
Right,
add, they want to add
understood.
CX, but
Got
instead,
it.
they were really either recommending approval or recommending denial.
Got it.
All right, thank you so much. That does conclude our agenda for the Administration and Finance and Recreation and Parks Committee. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Motion to adjourn, second. Thank you very much. All right, we'll take a brief All right, good afternoon again, and welcome to the Public Safety and Public Works Committee meeting for March 15th, 2022. We have present with us Mayor Kurt Wilson, Council Member Christine Hall, Council Member Lee Hills, Council Member William Morthland, and Council Member Palermo stepped out for just a moment. He should be right back. The purpose of committee meetings are for the city departments to convey information to the mayor and city council and discuss initiatives based on the published agenda. By ordinance, the committee consists of the mayor, the council members, and the city administrator. The ordinance mentions the city administrator as chair of committee meetings. This is a public meeting, but not a public hearing. Therefore, while the meeting is open to the public, we do not take public comments or questions during committee meetings unless specifically authorized by the mayor and council. Public comments or questions are received at the regular city council meetings on the second and fourth Monday of each month at 7:00 p.m. and the fifth Monday of each month in open forum. We do encourage citizens to engage our online platforms, and if you have any questions or need information, please do reach out to our staff who are available to provide that information to you. I would encourage the viewing audience to visit the city website for meetings, events, and departmental information. Also, if you have service requests or a need to report a concern, I would highly recommend utilizing the City of Roswell app or service web portal. I would also encourage viewing the items listed on the Mayor and Council's 100-day plan. There you will also find a video of Mayor Kurt Wilson detailing each project and initiative which comprises the 100-day plan. The first item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes for the Public Safety and Public Works Committee meeting for February 15th, 2022. I will entertain at this time a motion for approval of those minutes. A motion by Councilmember Hills. We have second by Mayor Wilson. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is under Public Safety Police, consideration of a community policing micro grant of up to $15,000. Thank you, Chief Conroy, and certainly glad to see you back.
All right, good evening, Mayor, City Council. This first item is a request for approval so we can apply for a community policing micro grant of an amount up to $15,000. This is a grant from the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council in partnership with the U.S. Attorney's Office of the Northern District of Georgia under the Project Safe Neighborhoods program. This is a grant that would be used for community outreach efforts directed at the youth in multifamily housing in the Holcomb Bridge 400 corridor. There is no match required for this grant. We only learned about this grant last week, and the deadline to apply is April 1st, so it's a fast turnaround. So if we get approval tonight, we'll start in the application, and it'll go before the mayor and city council on the 28th for approval before we submit.
Motion to approve.
All right, motion by Councilmember Palermo. Is that a second by Mayor Wilson?
Seconded.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Thank you so much. Passes unanimously. The next item is consideration for sale of explosive ordnance detection canine, ALF, to Fulton County Sheriff's Office. Yes, Chief Conroy.
Okay, this is for approval to sell of a city asset to the Fulton County Sheriff's Office. As we all know, ALF's current handler is leaving our department, joining the Fulton County Sheriff's Office. The sheriff approached me and said they have an interest in purchasing ALF to continue service with his handler at the Fulton County Sheriff's Office. This is an opportunity for both departments. They'll get a fully trained canine. We will get funding that will go towards the purchase of a new EOD canine, and this canine is also used for our community relations unit. So once we select a new handler and the sale is complete, then we will purchase a new canine. The funding for ALF was obtained out of the confiscated assets fund, so the proceeds from the sale would be returned to the confiscated assets fund.
All right, thank you, Chief Conroy. Any questions or comments regarding this item for Chief Conroy? All right, seeing none, I'll entertain a motion for approval to move this item forward.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Councilmember Hall, second by Councilmember Hills. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Passes unanimously. For the record, there were no items from Public Safety, Fire, or Public Works. That concludes the agenda items for Public Safety and Public Works Committee. At this time, if there is no further business, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion by Councilmember Morthland, second by Councilmember Hills. All in favor? All right, thank you very much, and thank you. Have a great evening.